of October 12th, 2023. Just a reminder to everyone that the meeting is being broadcast and recorded. First on our agenda, well, I guess I'll officially call the meeting to order at 7:23. And the first item on our agenda is the clerk's report. Kate?
Madam Chair, we received 4 communication by email from the public since the last planning board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is public comment. So if any members of the live audience or the...
Here for an item, so.
All right, Peter, I'll let you manage public comment.
Sure, so thank you so much. We have two members of the public that are looking to make a comment. So first, we're going to go in the room to the podium. Mr. Joel Arbeitman, please introduce yourself with your name and address.
I'm Joel Arbeitman. I chair the Ashland Upper Charles Trail Committee, and I thank the board for giving me an opportunity to speak to some issues of concern that I have. Last May, I submitted some written comments to the planning board about the Homer Ave, is it right? Homer Ave project. And the board's reaction at that time, one of the words that was used in sort of de-emphasizing what I felt was an important safety consideration was the word aspirational. We can't plan around a trail that doesn't exist. There's almost nothing here. You know, someday maybe there'll be a trail. And I just wanted to speak to a number of events that have occurred since May that lend important weight to how real this trail is, and I hope that you'll take this under consideration. First, I've been told by the select board chair that Senator Spilka has set aside some $2 million for Ashland's trail. That's a serious amount of money and would allow us to do a lot of surveying, engineering, and actual construction. Second, Representative Jack Lewis also was able to procure an additional $125,000 for the trail. Again, that's, you know, it's not going to build the whole trail, but it's an indication of deep commitment by our representatives and by the town. And perhaps most importantly, our own select board on June 20th at their retreat has determined that the trail project should be a priority project for the town, meaning that we have been receiving additional staff time and resources. Mr. Matchak has attended one meeting already with us, the town manager, and another one is scheduled in the next couple of weeks. So this is happening. This is not some far-off fantasy by some bike riding guy. This is real. There's substantial resources being put behind this, and we're doing it. So the question becomes, what impact or impacts do we need to consider when we look at projects that are literally right adjacent to the trail? I mean, we give great concern to abutters. The trail isn't a butter. And more importantly, the trail is going to have as its users our residents in Ashland. We're going to have kids riding bicycles. We're going to have adults riding bicycles, some of them with great skill and many not. And so one of the concerns that I want to raise about the Homer Ave project is the parking. My understanding is, I don't have the exact number, but it looks like there are some roughly 60 parking spots there. Can anybody tell me whether a traffic study has been done?
When the applicant first applied, there was some traffic counts submitted, yes.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear that.
Traffic counts, I believe, were submitted at the time of the original application.
So was that done by an independent traffic consulting firm, or was this supplied by the applicant?
It was supplied by the applicant, and that's all I can speak to.
Okay, so I mean, if one were to just make a simple statement that children are going to be riding by this project right where these cars that are parked in the project are going back to the development are going to be parking, have we provided an adequate level of diligence to assess what the risk to the children of the community and others using these bike lanes that we're looking to put in. One other item that I didn't mention is that the Select Board has been talking about, as part of our Complete Streets program, putting in a bike lane along Summer Street, which, as you know, would run from the 135 end down to the light at Main Street. The continuation of that is the bike path. That's the plan. So I have no traffic background, but I want to point out that if there are roughly 60 parking spots, whatever the actual number is, I don't have that, what is a reasonable expectation of trips per day, per car, or per unit, or per residence? I don't know. If each car goes out to work in the morning and comes back in the evening, and maybe goes out once to the supermarket or to a local restaurant or something and comes back, that's 4 trips. And you multiply that times the number of cars, well, each one of those trips is likely to be crossing the bike path. So reducing the number of parking spots is one way to reduce the risk to residents using the bike path. And looking at other types of traffic mitigation could be considered also, like a traffic light, for example, at the corner of Alden and Homer, or coming out of the rear lot, which I understand is now one way, which, by the way, I want to point out, the document that I submitted, that I really felt the board was very dismissive of the importance of these considerations I raised, included a recommendation to make that back parking lot a one-way, which I was glad to hear later the fire department had their own independent concerns, and that the board thought that was important to do. So that's great. That's a definite improvement. I think that's about it. So I guess the question is, and one other thing. I've been hearing a lot of talk, you guys know this better than I do, about possible significant housing going in where the current mill building is. So we're talking about we shouldn't be just looking at Homer Ave in a vacuum and saying, well, it's this many units, it's this many cars, here's our estimated trips per day on or crossing the bike path on Homer. But we're going to put in addition to that, more housing and more cars at the mill building if that project is a reality. And those people, we can speculate that they're going to go north up Myrtle Street to the Pike, or they'll never be on Homer. But a lot of those residents are going to be going over to the gas station on Homer. And again, it's crossing the bike path in and out. One last thing I wanted to say, and I hope I'm not misquoting the attorney. I watched the last hearing, and I believe this is what I heard the attorney say. Let me put it that way. There was a calculation made of the number of parking spots for the commercial space on Homer. I guess the first floor is what we're talking about. And I did my own math and couldn't come up with the same calculation, so maybe this could be explained more clearly. What I heard was that there's a certain calculation in our bylaws or zoning code that talks about how many spaces you need to allocate based on the type of business, number of seats, and so on. And what I heard Attorney Morris say was, I think that he said the pizza place would have required 9 seats, and each of the 2 smaller businesses, the barber shop and whatever the other one is, were 2 each. So that would have been 9 plus 2 plus 2, 13 parking spots for the current businesses, if we don't plan and allow, as they say in the shoe business, room in the toe if the businesses change. But let's say as a requirement that it would have been 13 spots. And Attorney Morris went on to explain that because it's in the downtown zone, or there are certain specificities in the zoning code, there's an exception, I guess, I'm not sure what the jargon is, to allow only 75% of the number calculated. And what I heard was he arrived at 8 when he did the calculation. My math and my little pocket calculator says if you do 3/4, 75% of 13, it's 10, 9.75 to be exact, which would require an extra 2 spots. Maybe I'm not doing the math right. Just to keep it simple, if it's 3/4 of 12, and this would be 3/4 of 13, that would be 9. He came up with 8. So I just want to point out that my math is showing that there would be an additional 2 public parking spots required. And again, I'm not saying I have a full understanding of this, but I was confused by that, and I would love to have an explanation. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate your giving me the time to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Arbeitman. Just for clarification, the downtown ADDA zoning bylaw does have its own parking calculations, and it's 75% of 75%. And so there's another step within your calculation that you missed.
Okay.
Okay?
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. The second person with their hand raised is Mr. Mark Dasoni. Mr. Mark Dasoni, can you please unmute yourself and state your name and address?
Hey, thank you. Good evening, Mark Sony, 29 Hawthorne Road. I have a couple of questions and maybe an opinion if I get an answer on one. The downtown construction is nearly finished. How much more through the planning department is left to have done that can be said to the public? That's one.
Mr. Dasoni. So yes, the downtown project is nearing completion. There's a couple elements that still need to be done. They're going to be installing brick in the middle island, in the coming days and/or weeks. And then I think that's really about it. I think they're down to a punch list. I am not the project manager on that, and so that may be better suited for our town manager. But I think the punch list items will be completed as soon as possible, and I think you're looking for final completion in the spring. I think everyone can appreciate the landscaping that was recently planted, and I think that's what I can, as an update I can give Mr. Dasoni.
And the other one would be, if I have permission to ask in the comprehensive plan, is how much more groundwork is left to be done before the public can have an idea of what there's going to be for back to the planning board, back and forth before public forums. What's there that going to be through the comprehensive plan through the members that are on it? If I can ask.
And Mark, I'm one of the members on the steering committee. The comprehensive plan process just started in some ways because we just began work with our consultant. And it is a multi-month process. Most communities, it takes about 2 years to wrap up a comprehensive plan process. So we're just at the beginning.
Okay.
At some point, there will be check-ins with the planning board as the work continues, and I'm sure the steering committee will seek input of the planning board, but there isn't a particular time frame that we can share right now until the consultant and the steering committee get going. It's just starting out.
I just had one little plug, though, on public, that December forum, and we don't have a date, but just have people really on the lookout, because that is a big kickoff of public input.
Okay, thank you. And there was some sort of talk in some committees, other committees in town here, saying that it's the two committees, the design review and the planning board. How strong are both of those boards together? Other than just ask, and they can look at this, say things about a project, and then come back and circle around, go back to one board, come back to the other. How strong is that circle together?
Mark, I think we're definitely making headway in the relationship. You may not be aware, we had at one point a meeting of both entities in order to talk about improving our communication, and we've developed some improvements, such as getting written feedback from design review, which is a major improvement in our communication style. So I would say that circle of communication is strengthening. I'm sure there's things we can do better, Mark, but we're making progress.
And my opinion was just not negative, not positive, but it's down the road sort of thing. The businesses' economic growth, I think, in my mind, should be more said than affordable housing, because the economic growth in this town is not there and still making the citizens, the older citizens, senior citizens, paying more from here. So businesses should be more welcomed, and housing should be put on the waiting list. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next item on our agenda is number 4. We're talking about a planning board representative to the MetroWest Regional Collaborative. And with us, we have Yolanda Greaves from the Select Board, who also currently chairs the MetroWest Regional Collaborative. And I've invited Yolanda here to kind of explain to us a little bit what it is.
Sure.
And we do have our new associate member, Amanda, who may be interested in filling that position. So if you can fill us in, we'd appreciate it, Yolanda.
Sure. So the excuse me, the MetroWest Regional Collaborative is one of the subregions of the MAPC, which is the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. They have 101 cities and towns that they represent, and as a town, we work with them. We pay dues to them to participate and be part of their organization. They also then help us with different projects. So the MetroWest Regional Collaborative is our subregion. It is currently 9 communities. It's about to be 10. It is Holliston, Ashland, Framingham, Natick, Marlborough, Wayland, Weston, Southborough, that's 8, Wellesley, and we're about to add Sherborne. One of the reasons we're looking to add Sherborne is through a lot of the discussions on the Upper Charles Trail, Sherborne was doing things, and we said, it would be really good if they were part of our conversation. What is the benefit of either participating or us being a part of the MetroWest Regional Collaborative? So when I first came on the select board 11 plus years ago, we needed a new appointee because the person who was the appointee was no longer on the board. And for me, it was an opportunity to meet other select board members and planning board members, as well as different community leaders throughout the region. And I was able to learn a lot and get to know all these people, so that when we're having discussions, it's not just an Ashland discussion, it can be a regional discussion. So we're about to look at having a discussion about the new MBTA 3A zoning. How is that impacting communities? How are different communities dealing with it? The other project that we've been working on for, probably 7 or 8 years is a project that MAPC has started, but that we are very much a big part of. It's called the Landline Project. And that is connecting multi-use trails, not only in our region, but throughout the region. And because of the work of this Landline Project, that is not just ours, but other regions, there is a north to south greenway that's getting put in place, so from Maine to Florida. And originally, they were going to have it come through Massachusetts out near Worcester and Springfield. Because of the work that our region is doing between the Upper Charles Trail, the Bruce Freeman Trail, the Chris Walsh Trail, and various other trails, the Minuteman Trail, Mass Center, between all these trails, it was determined that instead of having that north-south go to the middle of the state, it's going to come through our region. So the Upper Charles Trail that we are working on for Ashland, it won't necessarily hit the Ashland portion, but because we'll be connected to Sherborne and Holliston and Framingham eventually, Framingham is doing a lot of work, people will be coming down that trail and they'll be saying, oh, if I want to go see what Ashland's doing, or if I want to go see what's going on. So the collaboration within this organization for our region has been very beneficial for us for that. Like I said, for myself, when I first got on the board and I was the representative, I would go to these meetings and I learned so much about what other communities are doing, but it also gave me insight into some of what the planning board does, because I was still learning about I knew what the planning board did, but not to the same extent. I also met some great leaders. If you know Dennis Giambetti, who currently works for Senator Spilka's office. He was the Framingham representative. Another gentleman some of you may know or maybe not, Josh Ostroff, who was from Natick. He was their select board representative at the time. And now I'm making connections with Marlborough because they have their representative there, and Southborough. And so whoever decides to represent from the planning board, I think if you can sit in on those meetings on a regular basis, they are very educational. The important part, though, is we have not had a planning board representative since Preston Crowe stepped down. And unfortunately, the current bylaws of the collaborative is you have to have a quorum of your communities, and each community has 2 people that need to represent it to be able to take any vote. So we're not the only community that hasn't had a second person for a while, but this between now and November, we're in the process of really, as a group, trying to, every town, have their 2 representatives appointed and be at meetings so that we can take some votes. We have some bylaw changes that we need to vote on. We have some funding, project funding that we need to vote on. So when I spoke last with Tricia, and when I was here last time, it was it was suggested that maybe Amanda might be interested, but she might not always be able to make it. So I reached out and I got confirmation that we can have an appointee and we can have an alternate. We just need to put that in the appointing letter that we send to MetroWest Regional Collaborative. So if Amanda decides she'd like to be the appointee, I would recommend that Alvaro be her alternate, so that if she can't be at a meeting or if she's not there when voting is happening, that we at least have a second person, in the room, sort of say, so that the collaborative can get its business done. Because right now we've been hindered by not having, and again, it's not just Ashland that hasn't had one. Holliston's been having some issues, Marlborough, some other communities as well, where they maybe appoint people, but they don't show up, and you have to have a certain quorum to be able to take a vote.
So I have a question on that, because I think either last time you said it was a planning board. So what are the actual requirements? Is it just another representative, not
No, it
you,
needs to
or-
be a member, either a select board member or someone appointed by the select board, or a planning board member or someone appointed by the planning board for each of these communities. Now, for the 2 cities, for Framingham and Marlborough, it's city councilor or mayor appointees. But the idea is that for each of the communities, there need to be 2 people appointed, and then ideally show up at the meetings so that we can vote and have quorum. Because with 18 people, and it's going to be 20 people are going to be appointed, we're going to need to have at least 11 people showing up to be able to take a vote.
Okay, and that, I guess I would just want, when we mentioned last time Alvaro, he's not a planning board member, so I was wondering how that works. So
It can be an appointee, and there are many communities that do not have a planning board member or a select board member. I know for Weston, they have a select board member, and then it's their town planner. For Wayland, the woman who is appointed as the planning board member, or maybe she's a select board appointee, is no longer on the board. But no one currently on the board was interested, and she was interested in continuing the seat. Sarkey, who is now in Framingham, used to be in Wayland. He was their appointee for the planning board. So it doesn't have to be a planning board member. It has to be a planning board appointee or a select board appointee.
And just to note, either myself and or Alvaro should try to attend every meeting. So Alvaro has been attending and networking just for the reasons why Yolanda has stated. And when I try to jump on when I can. So just to make a note that Alvaro has had a presence, and we do try to stay connected within that sub-region group.
Yep.
And you noted that the meetings are at
The
8
third Thursday from 8 to 9:30.
the third Thursday at 8 to
8 a.m. to
9:30
9:30.
online, typically.
Yeah, so what we've been doing, certainly since COVID, is they've all been via Zoom unless we're having a big event. So in October, on the 26th, we're having one of our big trails events that's happening in Framingham. So that will not be in person. Fortunately for that one, there won't be any votes taken. It's really just presentations on what's going on and a way to, again, connect and talk to different people and find out what other planning board people are dealing with, or select board people, or even talking to their town managers or city councilors. And that won't just be our region. They reach out to the regions that abut us as well. So there's the Magic region and what's the one in the south? The south.
The South Shore Coalition, there's a North Shore Task Force, there's MAGIC.
Right.
There's the MetroWest, and I believe there's Three Rivers, which is the Medford area.
Right.
And then I believe there's a Northern Middlesex as well, which
Yeah.
covers Concord, Stowe, Maynard, that kind of district, I would say.
So Amanda did express interest in taking this position. We had talked about it a little bit before. It seemed like it was, and if anyone else is interested, they should step up, but someone that can commit themselves to this position. Amanda, do you want to speak on
Yeah,
that?
I'd be thrilled to represent the planning board. I think, my one hesitation was the timing and just family obligations, getting my kids to school, but I can be there. It's a question of, it might be 8:05, 8:10, and that's the
Yeah,
worry I had.
when I talked to Tricia about it, so because I'm the chair, I have a hand in creating the agenda. So if it's the kind of thing where if I know you're planning on being there, if you're our representative, I can make sure that we don't do, like minutes or any vote taking at the beginning of the meeting. We can move it to a little bit later in the meeting.
Perfect. And I'm thrilled at that opportunity and that flexibility. I would love to
And if you
represent
want
the board.
to talk in more detail, I'd love to have a conversation.
But first, are there any other comments from the planning board about who we want to represent us?
I have another comment, not about who to represent us.
Okay.
I guess I'm a little disappointed that sort of first I'm hearing that we weren't staffing this and it came up, and I get that that's how it works. But also, is there a way to integrate some feedback to the board, like about what's happening? Like high level, but can we put it on our agenda at the follow-up and have a quick
Absolutely. We will
update?
put Amanda on the spot every single meeting and have her report. But, and we actually did have someone, Lakshmi was actually our representative. And I don't know if she just wasn't aware always of the meetings. I'm not sure.
Until she
but-
left, she was, so after Preston left, she was your appointee.
Right.
So she was there. So I guess it's been since Lakshmi
Yeah,
has
so
left.
it hasn't been this whole time.
Yeah.
And
so-
Emma would go to the meetings, I would try to
Right,
go
I
to the
mean,
meetings.
certainly there
It
was
definitely-
representation from the planning, but because there was no one officially appointed for Ashland, other than myself, we didn't always have quorum. I mean, a lot of times we did, because of the other communities, but we're right now within the collaborative really trying to push that each community has their 2 appointees and it's official. And again, the October meeting wasn't as critical because we're not taking any votes, but at our meeting in November, which I believe is going to be the 30th because the 4th Thursday is actually Thanksgiving, so it'll be the week after, we'll be taking votes on the bylaw and funding of some projects.
So we just want to get this taken care of. So is there any other member of the board that is interested in taking on this responsibility? Seeing no hands raised.
I make a motion that we appoint Amanda Hayes to be planning board representative to the meeting with Alvaro, our assistant town planner, as the alternate.
And is there a second?
I'll second that.
And a roll call vote.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Tricia Kendall, aye. And that task is done.
Great, thank you very much, I appreciate it. And again, Amanda, let's get together and we can chat.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay,
I'm
you're
excited.
welcome. Thank you all.
All right, so next on our agenda, we have 2 public hearings tonight. The first one is 400 Cedar Street. This is a special permit for T-Mobile Northeast. Peter, can you kind of introduce that topic to us?
Thank you so much. So this application is for 400 Cedar Street, also for 396, sometimes known as 400 Cedar Street. This is a town of Ashland-owned water tank right on the Ashland-Holliston line. So the applicant is T-Mobile, represented tonight by Adam Braley. Excuse me, I forgot your law firm, I'm sorry. That's okay. I'll let you introduce yourself. But just in the process, the town of Ashland, for many years, has had cell equipment, communications equipment attached to this tower. And not to take any of the steam away from the application, but very briefly, over the years, the town of Ashland had 5 carriers attached to this water tank, 4 on the sides and then one on top of the tank, T-Mobile. Over the years, the town of Ashland, through our water and sewer department, DPW, Doug Small, and our consultant, Greg Eldridge, we've always kind of kept a close eye on the tank and really the structural integrity of the top of the tower with the equipment on it. So over time, Sprint merged with T-Mobile, and therefore Sprint has taken their equipment off the tower. The town of Ashland always has the desire to move T-Mobile to the side of the tower. So with Sprint leaving and or merging with T-Mobile, it's opened up a vacancy on the side of the tower. The town of Ashland let the lease expire for T-Mobile, which once sat on top of the tower, and then every 20 years you have to put out an RFP. And so the RFP was put out for the vacant spot on the side of the tower. T-Mobile was the winner of that RFP process, and they are looking to theoretically move their equipment to the side of from the top of the tower to the side of the tower. In doing so, they're looking to upgrade their equipment. But the permitting of T-Mobile on the tower, on the 400 Cedar Street Tower, does date back, I believe, to 2002, when the Zoning Board of Appeals issued the variance and a special permit for the location of their cell equipment. I do just want to make note that the applicant and ourselves in the town of Ashland worked together because the location of this tower sat very close to the town line, that both residents within 300 feet of the property in Ashland and within Holliston were notified of this hearing and of the equipment being proposed. So with that, I will turn it over to the applicant, Adam Braley, and he can take us through the application.
Great, thank you, Peter, and I don't think I have to say much more. Just for the record, my name's Adam Braillard. I am with a firm called Prince LaBelle Ty. We represent T-Mobile on a number of permitting and leasing and zoning aspects throughout the years. And I'm here in connection with a modification of an existing special permit that was granted back in 2002 for the reasons that that Peter referenced. I think we approached the town back in 2021 with an interest, T-Mobile's interest in modifying the existing site, changing out the antennas. There's currently 9 panel antennas up there with some remote radio units, I think 6 remote radio units. And T-Mobile at that time just wanted to swap out the antennas. The lease was coming up for end of its life for 20 years. And Peter contacted me, we got together and we said, let's kind of do everything here at once. If T-Mobile wants to continue to stay on the tank, then the town's gonna, then they're gonna have to respond to an RFP and win that bid. And then we can talk about what we want to do with the equipment. So that's what we did. The town put the location out to RFP, and I'm reiterating what Peter said, but T-Mobile responded to that. I did the work for that as well. A big part of what's in the application, that tab 6, I think, is the lease. Maybe I'm not sure what tab is. It's the lease and the RFP response. So we've been working on this for a while. I think it's tab 6, yeah. So once we won that, then the next step was then to negotiate the lease. I think there was a minimum bid amount, so the rent was already determined, but we needed to negotiate the legal terms. I also did that with the town and town council. And then that was fully executed not that long ago, probably 2 or 3 months ago. And then we filed our application with this board for the modification and or special permit. So what we're proposing, so that's kind of the history here. We've been working on this for a little while. Again, currently T-Mobile's on the top of the tank. Just going back a little bit, when we first contacted Peter in the town, they got the consultant involved, Haylard Ward, and then early 2022, Haylard Ward said, listen, tanks aren't really meant to have equipment on the top. Everything's good. Structural analysis that we've run is fine. What they've run is fine. The beams underneath are not corroded or anything like that. But over time, we don't want to worry about that. And their recommendation was for T-Mobile to go on the side of the tank. And it made sense now that T-Mobile and Sprint were merged, and Sprint was removing its equipment. So all that has happened. T-Mobile's agreed with that. Our RFP response referenced the mounting of the side of the antenna and coming off the top. The lease agreement and the exhibits in the lease agreement show T-Mobile taking the antennas off the top and going on the sides. So this is really close to the final step being a building permit. And that's why we're here. And so the proposal is to take the mounting equipment off, take the panel antennas off the top, the remote radio units off the top of the tank, anything that's on the top off the tank, and then put back on the side of the tank 8 panel antennas instead of, we have 9 up there now, but because of the challenges with other carriers that are on the side of the tank, we are not going to be able to get the full 9. So we'll have 2 sectors of 3 panel antennas and 1 sector of 2 panel antennas to total 9. That works for the radio frequency standpoint, so we're good there. And then we'll have 6 remote radio units also on the side of the tank, and then we'll run the conduit and the coaxial cabling accordingly and down where it already exists. At the base of the tank where T-Mobile's existing cabinets are, there's 2 existing cabinets. We're going to remove 1 large cabinet, which is about the size of a refrigerator, and then install 2 small cabinets on that same pad. One of those cabinets is a radio equipment cabinet, the other one's a battery backup. And we're going to run hybrid cables to the antennas. We're going to take off, I think, 12 coax cables and run smaller hybrid cables. And that's really the extent of the installation.
When you mentioned the consultant, is that the DPW's third-party consultant, Greg Eldridge?
Correct. So
Yes.
Greg Eldridge works for Haley and Ward. Greg Eldridge takes care of, is there, we always talk about GCG and how they do our civil reviews. Greg Eldridge and Haley and Ward are DPW's GCG third-party consultant for all water and sewer matters. And Greg has been reviewing this, and actually it's being reviewed one more time by Greg, and we're just waiting for final sign-off on that. I do want to make note, when you see the tank, and if you're ever coming up Elliott Street, outer Elliott Street from Sherborne, and you look above the tree line, I would say at around 10 o'clock, 10, 11 o'clock, you can actually see the tank. And one of the elements that we do need to look at as a town is actually paint the tank. And so that is one key component of another reason why we were looking to move the equipment off the top and to the side, is so we can have greater access to kind of maintain that tank.
So is it a matter of kind of safety for the equipment that the town requested this be moved?
I think it's both. I think it's a little bit of everything. I think number one, I think over time, structurally, we did not want equipment up on that tank. You know, it's a piece of infrastructure that the town owns and operates. And number two, it allows us greater access to maintain the tank. And then also with the vacancy of Sprint on the side of the tank, this was kind of the perfect opportunity to have, since Sprint dropped out, T-Mobile and merged with T-Mobile. T-Mobile was on the top. It was just kind of bringing everything together.
So, since a structural concern is kind of one of the bases for this change, is the town set on never leasing the top of the tank again?
Great question. I don't have a full answer to that, but I'm going to take a stab and say, yes, the town is not looking to, it's not recommended by Greg Eldridge to lease space on top of not just the town of Ashland's water tank, but on any water tank on top. And so I think it's kind of a Greg Eldridge third-party consultant civil engineering matter where you say, you know what, this tank built in this time era was really not developed and or designed to hold this weight. And so over time, there is a possibility. Obviously, I don't have the accreditations to tell you that the town will never lease this tank on top of the tank, but I don't think the town is in any interest to go out to bid to implement another carrier on top of the tank.
So, was there any preliminary findings from Greg Eldridge on this? You said that he was going to be issuing a final
Is it tab
report.
four?
We have a letter.
Tab 4, I think.
Is it, do we have anything?
Yeah, I think it's tab 4.
So that's the structural analysis that we ran.
Oh, this tab 4 is your analysis?
Yeah, that's our
Okay.
analysis, that,
For the side?
for the side.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do we have an analysis for the top being a bad idea?
What I have is, let me just find it, the letter from Greg. I have a couple copies of that.
Yeah, we don't have a structural analysis for the top of the tank.
Okay.
The equipment's been up there since 2000, the early 2000s, when T-Mobile was first issued this permit. So the way these telecommunications leases work, right? And please step in, Adam, if I misspeak. But from what I've collected, is the state of Massachusetts does not allow seasoned towns to enter into any lease agreements
We could just pass it around. Yeah.
that you cannot, typically leases, correct me if I'm wrong, do not exceed 20 years in a 20-year time frame. And so back in early 2000s, it was still, when cities and towns were permitting these cell towers on smokestacks, on water tanks, wherever, it was still a little bit of the Wild West, I would say.
Yeah, everything was run, all structurals were run, and there's been, not that I know of, there's been no issues with, equipment on water tanks, and I've done a ton of these. Really, my job is to do exactly what Peter's saying, is when leases are up for renewal, the 20 years have gone by, we go and we request towns to issue the RFPs, and we bid on those, and then a lot of times at that point, if in 20 years, everyone's gotten a lot smarter of language and rent and everything in time. And
Maintenance.
maintenance and, like, for example, this town, there was nothing in the lease that has expired that allowed the town to require the carrier to relocate temporarily while it's, say, for example, painted. Under this new lease, the town now has the right to say to T-Mobile, hey, you have so many, a couple months, you're right, to get off the tank while we repaint, and then you go back on. But, so it's just things like that. This letter came out in 2022, I think May, and around the same time when T-Mobile was saying, hey, we want to just modify the existing site. And I was working with Peter, and he said, listen, I think that Haley Ward is concerned, or not concerned, but they're recommending that if there's space on the side, to go on the side.
Has Haley Ward reviewed your tab 4 findings?
They're in the process of reviewing, but
Okay.
not concluded.
Okay.
Correct. Hasn't been concluded. It's been started. That whole process has been
Okay.
concluded. Yep.
So, I mean, my gut instinct, and thank you so much for showing us the letter. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I should have had my application.
Yeah, and you can take it back.
That's okay, I got a
if
copy.
you need to. But, I mean, my thought immediately is that obviously the application seems sound per various laws, that there's no substantial change in the physical dimensions relative to the current use, if you will, of the side being removed, and there's the space on the side. So I think arguably that it's hard for us to deny the application. My concern is more about our responsibility as the planning board, because we do have some jurisdiction in planning, and we have some responsibility for this tank. And so I have no problem agreeing to the application. Obviously, once we have Haley Ward confirm the tab 4, your analysis, we're not going to create a structural problem. Once I have that confirmation, I'm very comfortable approving the application. But I also feel like we as a planning board, separate issue, need to have a conversation about the fact that there was a safety concern 2 years ago that we did not know about until today. And we do have some obligation to think hard about a $250,000 lease coming into our community that we're now aware of because it was signed in August of this year. And we have some responsibility to make sure this tank and whatever structural damage we may have caused already is addressed, because at some point in the future, that is our responsibility. And this will be the planning board that knew and did not do anything. So I just want to make that very clear.
It sounded to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, that DBW has already long been kind of on top of this issue, and that's why we have a third-party consultant looking into it and making this recommendation.
That is correct.
So, yeah, so I think it's just illogical. I think that the letter by Mr. Eldridge, which is, I think it was by him, right, which is, I think, fairly brief. It's just very logical that we take them off the top and put them on the side. So I obviously have no problem with that either, with the caveat that we're waiting for the final review, so that of calculations we can't possibly understand. So.
I do have a question. I think I looked through the packet pretty well, but is there any equipment that's going to make more noise than what's there, or hopefully less noise than what's there?
Yeah, good question. So the battery, the cabinet that's being removed has, I think, 2 fans to cool the radios that are inside it, the computers that are inside it. Those fans are like 6 inches wide, and that's going to be removed and replaced with 2 smaller cabinets. One's the battery backup that has no noise, and the other is a smaller radio cabinet which has smaller fans. So I don't know the decibel changes, but I think it's going to be actually less or de minimis. So there's not going to be any change.
Are there any other questions from the board? Right. Then I think at this time, we could take a vote that is dependent on the final review and the final review from the third-party consultants.
How does that work procedurally, though? Because like if we're not seeing that, like, do we say dependent on
Well, I think is
who's
that
satisfied with it,
I
not
think
us? And
we would be then kind of directing Peter to, and we can wait on the vote, as long as we're in, as long as we're in agreement, we can have Peter start the decision process, because we still have to have a decision and vote on that decision. So if we're comfortable with him starting the decision process, and it's just dependent on the third-party reviewer saying, yep, everything looks good to him, we can expedite that process.
I am comfortable. I mean, there's due diligence being done in the process, and if a final analysis is what's missing, then I don't see any reason why we should not just expedite and just move on.
Okay.
Meaning, start drafting the decision and
Yeah.
vote next time.
Well, that's what you
Right.
just said, right?
Yeah, I think that's it was just kind of are we all ready to do that?
Yes,
That
I
we
think
should
we're all, yeah.
draft an approval decision.
Absolutely.
It's contingent upon the final review, and then we'll be
Definitely.
ready to vote on it next
Yeah.
time.
I can say for the next meeting, I'm more than capable of getting a draft decision out to the planning board, obviously, the Friday before, which would be next Friday. And then obviously, I'll continue to work with Greg and Adam and make sure that we get, obviously, final sign-off. And then everything is notated within the final decision for review. Very similar to the last kind of cell phone tower applications we've
Yeah.
kind of gone through. So, yep.
All right, general consensus on that, so we'll just proceed in that manner.
Okay. So I think at this point, we just continue to the next meeting, which is excuse me, I gotta look at my phone.
26th?
You are correct, 26.
I make a motion that we continue the hearing 400 Cedar special permit T-Mobile application to October 26th meeting.
And
I'll second.
And a roll call vote?
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcel Bahona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So
Thank you.
we will see this again on the 26th.
I do want to request from Peter a little bit more, again, separate issue, but related to this. I think that in light of this mention in the May 2022 letter of strength loss over the years, I think we do need to kind of have an update on what our plans are as a town to address any strength loss to that tank that we're now aware of, whatever that strength loss is.
I'm
I think
happy
we
to have a
should
conversation.
Look
with-
into that.
Yeah, I'm
So
happy
that-
to have a.
So that this board can be responsible, because I certainly don't want to, I don't want to not act on that. If it's a non-issue, I'd love to have a memo from our town folks, experts, to say, oh, it's perfectly fine, there's no strength loss, you don't have to worry about this. Whatever damage we've done by having this on top of the tank tower, you don't have to worry about. If the town takes that position, great, but until the town does, it's on us as planning board members. It becomes our responsibility.
But
So-
I don't understand that. I mean, we don't know that there's damage done, so we should not say it.
I don't,
we-
I've read this 2022 letter, and it raises my eyebrows a little bit.
Well, I read it too, and it
Because
didn't
somebody was
raise mine.
concerned.
It says that there were concerns, but there's no, but there's no final
Right,
definition
it's
that there
not,
was
it's not
damage.
structurally damaged right now, but by putting things on top for so long, we caused enough damage that we needed to
We
remove
don't know
it.
that.
Then why are we removing it?
We'll remove it because it was not designed to carry it, but the letter says that every structure is designed with extra capacity for contingencies.
So if Haley Ward opined that it was a good idea to remove it, why don't we get Haley Ward to confirm that there's nothing for us to repair?
Well, the planning board is not responsible for repairing parts of the town. Who is responsible for this
So
structure?
this
Is the water
structure-
department or who?
Yeah, the
who
structure,
this
I think,
belongs?
it's the water, the DPW, the Water and Sewer Department.
Okay, so I assume they are on top of whatever maintenance.
Greg
needed
Eldridge
for-
and our Water and Sewer Department work hand in hand, and they have they typically would, and what I assume and I believe is they have a capital improvements plan, right, about all infrastructure within town, depending if it's a sewer treatment, a sewer pump station to
Yeah.
water tanks. And I know in the next couple of years, the plan is to paint this tank, right? And it needs to be done, because I see it every day as I come to work, and I think that's one of the major components to make sure that we can maintain and update this tank. And I think for the future of this tank and for any infrastructure in the town of Ashland, is that we're saying the best option for the town right now is to move T-Mobile off the top and put it on the side. And that's been always my takeaway. I'm happy to reach out to Greg and
It could be
have
as
a
simple
conver-
as remembering that
conversation.
we have jurisdiction over planning, including resources. We are currently in the middle of a comprehensive plan. We have a very important resource called a water tank.
Yeah,
We should
let's-
at least make sure to notify our consultant for the comprehensive plan. We have $250,000 coming in for a 5-year lease. We have a resource now financially to repair this tank. We, as a planning board, have jurisdiction to plan and take care of our
Yeah,
resources.
I think
Let's
it's-
do that.
I think it's clear. I think DPW and Greg Eldridge are already on top of this, but we can ask them to report
I
where
think
they.
that's a
so that-
great idea.
So, right, but
Yes,
I
thank
think it's
you.
on their court, and I think they're already on top of it. But we will ask Greg Eldridge about that so that we can know the status of the tank.
Yep.
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
follow up with him, but I will let, we'll see you in 2 weeks, and we'll work together on it and see everything through.
Awesome, thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a great night.
All right, next on our agenda, our second public hearing is 9 to 49 Homer Avenue, site plan and special permit application. Peter, can you just give us a quick update about where this is?
Sure. So the last time we met on this, the application team who's here joins us via Zoom, Mr. Attorney Terry Morris. I believe their architect Ron Bork and also their civil engineer Rick Salvo are on the call. So since our last meeting, the application team met with the design review committee last Thursday night. The design review committee again met last night, and so they very swiftly issued their memo this morning, which I received, which I forwarded out to everybody. So I know timing wasn't the greatest, and that's just part of the process. However, I can let the application team give you a review, and obviously the design review committee, their report speaks for itself. In addition, this morning I also received the GCG report. And so I spoke with GCG today, and I had a good conversation with Rick Salvo, the civil engineer. So at this point, we received DRC's report, and I believe it's their final report. And we do have our GCG. I think there's some outstanding engineering items that speaking to both GCG and Mr. Salvo that we just need to kind of tie down. But that's where everything kind of stands tonight. And so, please, just a note before I give the microphone over to the application team. I just want to make a note that all the material samples have been submitted, and that's what's displayed here on the table. So, Ron.
I'm going to take it back.
Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna hand it to Tricia.
Yeah, so, given that, and I think all the members are aware of this, that we got 2 reports just today. One was from the Design Review Committee, and as Peter said on their meetings, and we also got a round of reviews from GCG, you know, and which frankly I haven't even had a chance to open, right? As you know, both of them came late in the day. I did skim through the Design Review Committee, but that was all the time I had, and I'm sure most, if not all of you, are in the same boat. So my suggestion tonight is that we put aside the GCG report for now, till we at least have a chance to read through it. Those tend to be more complex issues that you want to be fully awake to understand. We've already been through the Design Review Committee things before, so it's a little bit more familiar. And so my recommendation would be that we start going through the Design Review Committee. We'll let the applicant present the new items that they presented to the Design Review Committee, if any. Nothing that we've seen before. We don't need to see it again. But then really start just going through the list of Design Review Committee, and we get as far as we get this evening looking at those things, knowing that, again, most of us really haven't had a chance to look at it in any depth to this point. Any feedback on that plan? Sounds like a plan. So we're going to go through the red stuff and kind of... I think it's the blue stuff, actually. The blue stuff is the Design Review Committee notes. The red were the initial action items. Oh, gotcha. The green, what was added by Marcelo and I, and then the blue is the kind of final notes. So that said, now I will turn it over to the applicant, knowing that is our plan for this evening. If you have anything you want to add or ask or request different than that plan, I'm willing to hear it, but that's where we're sitting, I think.
No, as a matter of fact, we received the reports as Peter Matchak said today, at the same time you did. So we really having a chance to delve into them rather than simply read them cursorily and point out any things that we think we've already answered. I think what we did, we approached the Design Review Committee with the markup that you and Marcello did and focused on those issues. Largely, they dealt with hardscape and landscaping because as we went through your markup, there were several places where you indicated that was the purview of the Design Review Committee, and we focused on that. We focused on the treatment of the sidewalk, the so-called plazas in front of each of the buildings, and then, of course, we finished up with the actual treatment of the facades themselves and materials. I have read the DRC report, and I think that perhaps that would be the best document to, since the members may not have had the opportunity to go through it, perhaps we could put that up on the screen and use that as a template and go through each one and tell you what.
Yeah, actually, I think we all have it in front of us. So I think the best thing would be to put up the drawings so that we can, the latest drawings that we can, if we're looking at the plan or the elevation, we actually have that large in front of us.
Ron, who's putting up? There we go. Perhaps one of the most, just as an introductory remark, Madam Chair, one of the most significant changes to the look of the building. As you know, at the last meeting, the most significant change was to the site plan itself, where we changed the entry and exit point to one-way traffic in off of Homer and out onto Alden. The most obvious physical change to the facades was we picked up on the suggestion that the DRC made, that they felt that the commercial facades that typify the first floor in 3 of the buildings that project forward on Homer Street, we had used brick in the recessed areas. I hope I'm not stealing my colleague Ron's thunder. And the 2 buildings at the end, as you will see, we had a brick inlay, and they had suggested that we use a common approach or a uniform approach to the front first story facades, and we've agreed to do that. I'm not sure whether Ron has had a chance to change that or not, but I just point that out as one of the more obvious changes. Ron, are you ready?
Yeah, so I think.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think the first point, if we're following the Design Review Committee document, the first point on page 217 is about the front, the plaza spaces in front. So if we can look at a plan of the plaza spaces, I think there's a rendered plan. Yeah. So, it seems like there was a discussion, so I just want to clarify this for the planning board. It says that they're noting on record that these spaces should continue to be reviewed throughout the project development process, such as flexibility is provided for use of undefined tenants and for the community. So do you want to just review what that discussion was? It sounds like since we don't know what the tenants are going to be, we don't know if tables out in front of those little areas are appropriate, or if something else is appropriate out in front of those entrances. Is my understanding on that correct?
I think,
No, that is correct.
Okay.
Which is sort of that discussion we've been having back and forth where we don't know what the tenants are. It's very difficult. So the best we can do is provide a space that is adaptable. And as you can see here, there are really 4 different types if you go from left to right. So on the far left, you'll see that it's just an entry sequence. There could be benches, bike racks, that type of thing, but really it's not suited for seating. The second bay from the left, I've indicated bike racks and seating, and an open plaza, which the Design Review Committee had requested initially to widen that and make it a little more open. The third bay introduces some plantings to separate the entrance from the plaza to the sidewalk, and has benches and bicycle racks. And the far right is the entrance into the residential lobby, as well as side doors for some of those commercial spaces. So from our discussion, and I think what's been marked up on the plan is that they indicated that the third bay over with the tree in the center and the well is what they'd like to see presented in the other bay to the left as well, and to recess the benches into the landscape slightly, so that we introduce benches there as well. It does still give us that opportunity for flex space where there would be sufficient space on either one of those if one was a deli and the other one was retail space, for example. We could have tables, in either one of those bays, and I think that would work out well. So it sort of accomplishes that goal of having a flexible space that can accommodate the tenants, whoever they be. Another major discussion we had was about landscaping. So we spent a significant amount of time talking about the plantings, and they had made suggestions, which they've indicated in this document. We have not had a chance to update that yet, but Julie and I will work on that, and that will be sort of that final discussion about the landscaping, hopefully. So I think we'll meet what their intent is, and I think that should be fine with that.
Ron, if I could interject one thing. One of the things in discussing the plazas, so to speak, and the introduction of a tree in the left-hand side, there was also discussion of where we locate bicycle racks, bicycle facilities. And I think at the end of the discussion, there was pretty much agreement that they would be located just back of sidewalk rather than closer to the buildings. So this doesn't show on this plan, but it's something that I think would enter into the discussion, any final discussion about how we treat the area, these spaces.
That is correct.
Right, so I think the general point the Design Review Committee is saying, I believe, is that there's going to be some flexibility in these spaces to accommodate different types of tenants, and that would be appropriate, as we have no idea what the program would be going into these spaces. To me, that seems very logical, and I would say that maybe if there's a a major change from the final site plan submitted, that might need to go back in front of the planning board, but otherwise, we assume that there's gonna be some flexibilities, benches versus tables versus, whatever else might be out there.
I mean, I took it a little bit differently. I don't think it's just about tenants, it's also about the community. And so I was not there, so the applicant can correct me, but I took that comment to mean kind of both usage, not just tenants. And so if you have bike racks a little bit closer to the road, I believe there was some prior discussion at another meeting we had that the trail may not be that far away. Part of what we're thinking about here is how this space creates a sense of community, how it might be utilized, people coming and going to these businesses, sure, are tenants, but there also might be community members going to school or walking home or walking to the post office, and this could be a space that allows that communal feel as well. And it brings to mind, I had a recent trip in Maine where there are apartment buildings that essentially have public space integrated so that you can enter these types of spaces, and there might be like, the one I'm thinking of in Maine had a chair, that represented that town, and you could like sit in the chair and take a picture across from the waterfront of, the little town name behind you kind of deal. So like you could in theory envision more of a community presence in some of these spaces relative to the historic train station or some kind of easement, if you will, for public space into these areas. So that's kind of how I took that comment, because it doesn't just mention tenants.
So how does that differ from flexible spaces?
As long as we recognize it's not just about tenant use, it's also about thinking about this as a potential public space in part.
So the flexibility I like, but the applicant mentioned some specifics. So like, I don't want to lose track of those. I think we all agree on bike racks. We fought hard for bike racks sometimes and didn't get them.
I think bike racks come later in the document.
It probably does, but I guess it's related to those spaces. Like I would go bike racks, yes, toward the road, yes, or no. It's a board decision. Tree on the other one, yes or no. Like just to get through what was said, because we're losing trail of that if we don't.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just know that both the tree and the bike
That's
racks
true.
are later in this document.
They are, you're right.
So-
I guess, and I don't want to take this way off track, but we like green space, but is that like landscaped, meaning not usable green space? Because that seems like a missed opportunity on the public feel and usable. Does anyone know? I don't, and
I don't know where the balance, I mean, maybe it's a question for the applicant, the balance between paving versus planting. Versus.
Right,
Yeah.
because there could be plantings that still make it usable public space, right? There could be, we've been trying to activate these spaces, right, having events. And I'm not asking them to have events, that's not my point. We are trying hard to leave possibilities. So if that becomes a planting that maybe hopefully looks nice but is not usable, maybe that's a missed opportunity.
But looking nice is also part of activating
Yeah,
the street.
But I think we can get both.
I think it's kind of a matter of
So what is this?
proportions, yeah. That,
Can they?
please, yeah.
Can the engineer confirm? What is these green areas and this rendering that shows as little circles on the plan? What are those? Is that grass or is that some general low planting? What
No,
did
those are low plantings. So we did not look at this space as lawn or something that is really suited for the public to go on and lay down, rest,
Sure.
whatever that.
But what was this part of the discussion on planting with the design review committee?
As far as using that space for public use, no, that was.
No. Meaning that you show a planting plan and you guys discussed planting, right? As part of what we asked them to review with you.
Correct.
So this
We have a
was
sep- we have a
agreed
separate
upon with
planting
them.
plan. We have a separate landscape plan that actually fleshes this out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there we go.
And this is, so I'm gonna go to the next page, which shows what these plants actually look like, but, so these are the types of plantings we were looking at for these spaces. So if you look at this Romatica, I'm butchering the word, but you know, we were looking at having those spaces be occupied with these types of plants, spaced appropriately apart, but not really creating public spaces within them.
Yeah, no, I see the point, and I understand what Kate is mentioning. I'm just saying that I personally don't feel like we need to micromanage that point to that level. I think that if the decision from the proponent is to plant things and have some really nice front, which creates a little bit of a recess, a little, you know, psychological privacy from a street that is very close to the development, I'll be fine with that, and it looks like the design review committee did not object to it, so I would be fine with going along with what has been discussed with them.
We seem to talk a lot about the public realm and kind of that connection. The reality of this is there's a little bit of rigidity because of the size of the area that is really the landscape area. So when we talk about access to public and have a bike rack, so there's going to be larger circulation that we need to really consider. And when you start to put those things in on paper, this is really kind of just a landscape area. It's not really a place where we call it pocket park. It sounds as if it's like acres of land, but it is really not. It is a patch of landscape in front of a building. And it would be really interesting to see that dynamics of people wanting to sit in front of a building and feel like it is a community space. It's not that deep. So I think we have to really look at it from the scale point of view and be really, I don't know if you can get any more creative, but I think the landscape is very minimal to really say this is a public realm and kind of the interaction. I don't think that's how it's going to pan out.
So the only thing I can think of creatively that's not massive and not disturbing is maybe a couple of benches that are kind of open to the public. So I would imagine our community is getting older. Ideally, we have more walking in our community. We're trying to create more of a sidewalk community. You know, I can see elders walking to the post office, coming by this space and having a place to sit down. That's kind of what I'm envisioning as a creative kind of component where the public could maybe have 2 or 3 benches to sort of enjoy this what seems to be a pretty space that you're trying to create.
In earlier presentations, I did have benches facing the sidewalk, and they were, I believe they were not really acceptable.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that that's what Anna's saying, because I would agree, sitting there looking at a street is, I would not want to sit there. But the way they're being suggested
right
here,
now
I
you
guess
don't, but
what I understood you're saying in terms of the spirit of,
Yeah.
is like if I see this drawing and, you know, close to the center to the right on that plaza, there's benches kind of next to the plants, and I heard that they're going to be now a little more embedded into the planting. Seems nice. That you could see more. You could see it also on the other side.
Yeah,
right?
or you could be
But-
at the side of the trees, so
'cause
you're
you could-
looking towards the tree.
But you could face like other bench, so you can actually
Exactly.
talk to somebody as opposed
Exactly.
to facing the cars. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like where the trees are, if you're going to have 2 areas with trees, you could have benches on each side facing in so that the tree is in the middle, essentially. You can choose to look to your side and look towards the old train station or across towards the farmer's market,
Yeah.
or you could be looking at one another for a moment. And
But that's how that one is working, right? The one
Yeah.
with the tree with the.
Right, so this is that small pocket park we created as you enter the site from the corner of Homer. And it was designed as a response to wanting to acknowledge the train station, but not copy it. So, you know, as you can see, what I did was I took the textures off the wall and turned the colors, not the physical roughness of the stone, but use that patterning and the colors in the paving. Have several benches, limited plantings for a little bit of enclosure. And then you can see it on the right side, a small roofed area over that bench that carries that vocabulary of that train station. I think that was a good compromise to tying one side of the street to the other, as well as providing a public space that is in an appropriate location, so that it is someplace where you can go and you can read the paper, where you can relax. You're seeing the street, you've got some enclosure from the building, and you have a direct correlation to the train station across the street. So we did consciously provide that space, and I think that's the appropriate location for it. Trying to find a rendering that shows it.
I mean, I for one like that space there, and I guess I'm suggesting a few more, maybe the same type of benches towards that front where you have the nice 2 trees that you're adding, so that you have that element both on the side pocket park, but also a little bit in the front. The design review committee mentioned some kind of mural. Where would that be?
So that's at the pocket park, but
That was in the cheek wall of
Well,
the
on the base
barber.
of this wall here. So if you can see my cursor with my little hand moving.
Yeah, so aren't there already benches on either side of that tree on the drawing that you were just showing? If we go back to the plan we were looking at, right there. Right there, I see bench seating on the opposite sides of the tree. Isn't
Are
that
those
right?
benches?
Right,
Yep.
so this
Right there.
one
That's the
form,
one I was
this was the
referring
second
to.
form.
Yep. So, and
So,
it maybe is
is
the
this
best fit in those 2 big areas because they have more space.
Yeah, that's exactly what Anna was
Yeah,
suggesting.
I didn't realize those were benches. I
so-
thought that was just some kind of color. Thank you. But yeah, if those are benches, I think that's great. And
Yeah.
I think you mentioned
And I believe the design review committee, like I said, later in this document, suggested adding a tree just like that one to
Yep.
the other large
the other one.
plaza. And so if we just
Replicate.
Mimic it.
replicate, then we have 4 benches, which should be plenty, especially if you have an ice cream shop or something where
Yeah.
it's
Well, I
not
think that's
just
great.
Plus the
public.
pocket park, so there would be
Yeah.
plenty to choose from.
Yeah, that they can be used by the businesses and by the occasional person who's walking
Yeah.
around, you know.
Yeah.
That's
So-
exactly
My
what I'm
But
saying.
intent was also to add benches into the landscaping here
Sure.
on this
I
far
mean,
left
I don't think we can,
portion.
I don't think it would hurt to have benches. I think we will invite, I'm
Yeah, I do
hap-
think you can overdo it though. Like, I don't think you
Sure.
have to have every plaza.
Yeah.
be
Those
filled
2
with
that are the
benches,
widest,
right?
those 2 that are the widest with
Yeah, the-
some tree and benches, I think you can just limit at
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
and
so if
that
the-
would be more than sufficient.
If the 2 widest locations, which like I said, I think is already in the document, have that center tree and the 2 benches, which you
Sure.
already have on those 2
gonna be
widest
nice.
locations. And then the other ones, I think, they're smaller and they stay more flexible depending on what, maybe it's just a sidewalk into the entry on those.
Sounds like,
Use those opportunities of those furniture elements to be a little more organic than rigid. So maybe it's a little more built into the landscape, and maybe that'll soften the overall look and feel versus a little bit rigidity, I think. Right now it feels, obviously for rendering purpose, you have it as a furniture piece, but I think it needs that little finessing of that organic feel that street automatically gives you. We just need to bring that into that landscape.
I mean, you do realize you're gonna have a lot of dogs on this thing, right? So that's gonna soften it up pretty quick.
Dogs, bikes, wheelchair, you're gonna have a lot of activity.
Are we ready to go on to the next item? I think we've covered this one, and probably several others that are coming. So the next item, and we may be coming back to this diagram, but I'd like to kind of keep going in order. On page 3 of 17, they're talking actually about the materiality. Now, it says in here, I think that originally you presented 4 different material palette options, and then I think we expected that you were gonna maybe present more than one, but you presented one option or a suggested option?
Yes, yes.
And so, And I think we have those colors before us.
Okay.
Upon initial review, let's see. So the building recesses, it says pearl gray and gray slate. Is that the?
Where is that?
No, so, part of my next task from that meeting is to upgrade to the colors that you have in front of you. Because the applicant, selected those colors, but I had already done the renderings.
Oh,
so
no renderings yet for it.
Okay, so
The textures and the materials will be this, as shown here, the colors will be, as you see them in front of you.
On the desk.
Are those, Peter? So what we have in front of us are khaki brown and timber bark.
yeah, which are not on this
That's not what
list.
this is recommended. Do we have pearl gray and gray slate?
I have pearl gray, which is this,
Hmm.
and then this is gray slate.
And where would those go on this rendering? I know the rendering is not accurate to the color scheme, but where would we imagine it to be?
Does it say there on the text where the?
Building recesses, where is that?
This is
In the deep
In
parts,
the deep parts,
Yeah.
okay, so that part right there?
yes.
Okay,
texture versus non-texture.
so we have to like pretend.
Everything's using the white AZAC.
Which is a little cooler than that rendering shows. It's a little more on the warm
Right.
side, right?
Yeah, actually it says, okay, so the notes say cladding reviewed, renderings are cool gray tones while submitted samples are beige tan. Upon initial review, cool gray as rendered was preferred as a contrast to the warmth of the brick.
Cool gray, so that's what they mean by pearl gray and gray slate?
Yeah, that's these ones there.
So they're considering that to be cool gray?
Yeah, so they're looking, it sounds to me like
They
the
like that.
design review committee likes the cool colors versus the warm colors.
Okay,
But isn't that contradicting with the train station palette?
So what you see in your left hand would be the recess, and the right would be the darker shingle and clapboard that you see.
so,
And there was also discussion about the brick and using the same brick that, and that's probably further in the document, but using the same brick that you're using for your downtown, and using that as our paving pattern for the borders, and then on the face of the building where there's brick. So we would carry that vocabulary from downtown onto the building.
Yeah, so I think it's gonna be impossible for us to review this in terms of words and imagining.
yeah, it's hard.
The
We're not that
image-
imaginative.
And while we know that, it's impossible to get the rendering to match the materials, that's just not possible. But we can try to get them as close as you can. Like, for instance, the brick shown on there is a very warm yellowish brick. And here we have a red brick, which is more indicative of the sidewalks and stuff downtown. And so I'm not sure which one.
So
We're going-
what I'm confused about the whole thing, right? We worked hard to say these are under design review purview. They came back with a recommendation. So it sounds like, I don't know if this board agrees with the recommendation or not. Me personally, I am going with what the board said, the design review. What isn't clear to me is if the applicant says, I don't want to do that.
But
That
is the applicant saying that?
That's a good point.
That's what I
Is
haven't
the
heard.
applicant saying that?
I don't know. I can't tell from this whole conversation. That's why I'd like to get out of the way.
So question to the applicant, you were given recommendations, and I know that you just got this today, the same as us, right? But you're not opposed to trying the recommended colors as given on the facade?
No, I'm not. I can't speak for Charlie, but one thing that came out of that meeting was the request about matching the brick from the downtown. So this rendering was previous to that. So that discussion resulted as a result of this rendering. So that's
So if-
where they said,
so if
it'd be nice
Charlie
if we
hasn't
put
yet
the
approved
downtown
it.
brick. So that red brick would be replacing the brick that I have shown on those renderings.
Okay, and I think and Marcella, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that recommendation about looking at the brick had to do with continuing the street materials and sidewalk materials
That's what
on
we've
the,
that's what we've always said.
on
Yeah.
the plane of the street and sidewalk, not necessarily on the buildings.
Right,
Is
that's the
that
thing.
correct, or?
I'm confused about that.
Yeah, so that continuing the downtown work, the sidewalk was always intended, on the planning
the
board's point of view, to be on the plane of the sidewalk, not on the plane of the buildings.
So where does it say, does the applicant know where in the design review document it talks about the town colors continuing?
But I think, can I just go back? So we're on 3 of 17, B, materials and textures, 1B1, 10/5/23.
Yeah.
What it seems like is the applicant will go back and make as best they can renderings. What I think we have to do, though, is that are we agreeing with the recommendations of the design review to tell them yes or no?
Well,
That's where I'm still confused.
Well, I think the thing is, since we have no visual about what those, like, this doesn't seem totally, the image that we're seeing
Yeah.
right now doesn't seem totally updated with what the paper says. So we shouldn't have to envision whether we agree with it or not.
I understand that part.
Yeah.
I'm saying agree that we want them to do that.
Yes.
Is probably a better way to say
Yes.
We
that.
want them to come back with a rendering that matches what was
What the
recommended,
recommendations of the design
so that
review.
we
But
could
that's-
then make a decision.
That's what I'm asking. Are we asking them to do that?
But then there's another wrinkle, because the way I'm reading this, it says, where was I? We prefer contrast the warmth of the brick. Okay. Upon initial review, cool gray as rendered is preferred as a contrast to the warmth of the brick. So as rendered, are we referring to the drawing that we have here on the screen when that discussion took place?
No idea.
So what does
Yes,
as
you are.
rendered mean?
I agree with Marcelo that they're saying as rendered, I believe they're saying that as the rendering looks, the closest match is pearl gray and that's.
Exactly.
And it's
So-
preferred over what was submitted, which was the khaki brown.
Correct.
and,
That's the way I read it.
That's the way I see it too.
And the way I read
Okay.
this rendering, of course, the rendering is not perfect and it's impossible to do a perfect rendition of reality. But it seems to me that the overall palette and contrast accents that this rendering shows was well received. I personally happen to like it. So
I'm not
if,
opposed to it either.
so if that is the recommendation, I personally will be happy to go with it, but I don't know if we are kind of making a storm on a glass
Yeah,
of water here. But
No, so you're saying that,
I agree.
you're saying that when we look at the image, which we seem to like, those grays are more like the ones that the design review committee, the pearl gray and
Yeah.
gray slate, they're not like the brown grays.
Or exactly, or
So-
even if it's a little closer to it, that's fine. But can you put on the screen the rendering, the first drawing where you see it from the street and you see all the complex? There you go, here. So this is probably what was it looks a little different than the other, I guess because of the sunlight, where the sun
Right,
of the rendering
yeah.
is. This one looks a little more brownish in general. But the scheme seems pretty good to me. It seems, the trim work and the clapboard location, the shingle locations, and if it goes on the gray tones, I will be just fine saying, yeah, okay.
And what color is the brick, sorry, what color is the brick supposed to be? Like, 'cause on the renderings, it looks kind of like a yellow brick, and here we
I
have a
think
red.
that's for the
brick.
screen, the color, it depends on what your screen is set to, but on page 9 is where they reference the material. So material 1 recommendation, brick matching downtown renovation project at the ground surfaces and similar color brick at the wall. So they're asking us to put it on the building, as
And
well as into the plazas. So we have a border on the plazas, so that would be that brick. I'm not sure, is the intent that your sidewalks will be brick in that area?
I think the confusion is also because further down the same page 3, there is a reference to 21 Main style, which has black frames, window frames, and that brick. So it feels like we are trying to do something what 21 Main is in a different location. But I think this particular campus should really connect to the train station, right? It has nothing to do with 21 Main. So if you change all the window frames to all black and that brick, it changes the whole context of what we're looking at here. So I'm not sure what they're trying to achieve here.
Haven't we seen always the frames, black frames on these windows? I think we have. I don't think that has changed.
Yeah, what's deceptive in these
No, it's
renderings?
Oh, the trim, you mean?
the trim, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember some discussion that we didn't want to be like too replicating the train station. I kind of respect the look, if you will, of that black trim in the sense that, yeah, we don't have Main Street project anymore, but it's not that far from some of the things this board seems to like, if you will. So I think their design review is trying to give us something that we seem to appreciate.
Yeah, and in general, I would say, I will only add that it looks like the design review was appreciative of the work, the design work that is shown here. So in general, I would say, I would be very comfortable with going with what the architect and the designer that envisioned this project selects as the best palette. I think going towards the grays seems fine to me. If they want it a little warmer, I'll be fine with that too.
I mean, I'm noticing even a difference in the screens. This looks much cooler.
Yeah,
If you look here,
that's true.
Yeah.
then
Okay, that's
this,
a little
which is
freaky.
a lot yellower.
That's a little freaky.
Yeah.
Ron, can you confirm the samples that you submitted, was the rendering kind of based out of those colors, or even I know
correct.
it's hard to match,
Yeah, what I
but,
did was I scanned the material and then I picked it like with an eyedropper.
okay,
So it's very difficult with computer screens because
Sure.
everyone's frequency and there's just little nuances to them that.
so your design intent was a warmer palette, not a cooler palette?
That's a night gray.
Is that
That's my intent. And then the owner,
Where would that be?
also had his ideas with those cooler colors, or the warmer colors.
Thank you.
Unfortunately,
So-
we didn't coordinate the two together for that meeting.
It's up in the gable.
So, like, would it be possible for us to maybe like label these things like A through Z and like put letters up there so like we can connect the dots as to what goes where? Because I'm not getting it.
Okay, so,
Like, I think maybe it would be helpful to have the applicant in person next time so that we can more quickly identify.
Or maybe a field trip with design review team.
okay,
But what are we looking at?
Color
There's no
samples.
building. Oh,
pause it right there, Rance. Okay. Okay, so just so we have this clear according to what's in the report. So there's 3 shades of gray that we're talking about. On the very top in the triangles, right? Up in the very top in the triangles where it looks like shingles,
okay.
that is what they were talking about as being night gray.
gray.
This is night gray,
Yeah.
right? In the middle band, there are some planes that are closer to us. Those are shown darker. Those are the gray slate. So they're a middle gray, just like on the drawing, it's a middle gray.
Okay.
right? And then the ones that are recessed, but at the same level, they're showing as a
This thing.
pearl gray.
It's not bad.
So these are the renderings provided, and I think these are the actual colors that the design review committee picked
Okay.
out, these 3 grays.
Yeah, if those are the 3 grays, I'm happy with that piece of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think to Marcelo's point, what design review is saying is that these match this better than these, which kind of match this
Hey,
better.
Ron,
Right, those samples are a little more
Like,
brown gray
exactly,
than
yeah.
cool gray.
Yeah,
And these I love.
And my only question would that be about the brick,
yeah, the brick is confusing.
which could be fine, because it does match the street, but that's not the brick that's being shown on the rendering. On the rendering, it's yellow brick, and this is red brick.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I would say is if we can get that yellow-orange brick changed more to,
The one near the entrance?
yeah, the entrance, because I don't think that's this to me. That's not a
Yeah.
red brick. It's, what? Are they
Is that
different
brick
things?
that we're looking at?
I think the brick is, the brick is just like Tricia said, it's a lot redder
Yeah,
than the rendering show.
yeah.
Is that brick what we have on our street? Or would
Apparently-
have?
Apparently, yes.
Okay.
Apparently that,
So we're.
Now I get it.
Page 9 on the 10-5, we're talking about brick that we walk on, not on the wall, right? And I'm just trying to be clear, because we mixed up those two, and I want.
well, I think originally, I believe, and Marcelo will have to comment, because I think this was his originally comment, in continuing the street materials, we were talking about continuing, like, don't switch from red brick downtown to gray brick or yellow brick on the ground
Yes.
at this location. Here, I think they did also take it up onto the wall, which I'm not opposed to. I just don't think the rendering shows that color, even close, you know.
Actually, there's something nice about the building speaking.
We've acknowledged that.
Material-wise with the downtown materials.
Yeah.
Is the applicant able to hear us at all?
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
Okay.
we have acknowledged what you're saying. And I think Ron has made it clear that the brick that he's shown is not what we're proposing now. We're proposing what the DRC had recommended, and what you're talking about, which is a redder brick.
Yeah, that, it's fine. I think we're all just catching up.
Yeah.
Right,
If-
yeah, we
you know,
are.
so-
We're on
No,
the
to
same page.
Deepa's point, I think we should talk about Deepa's point, because she's saying, should we maybe rethink and somehow connect to the train station?
I feel this palette is way too contemporary for that.
We are having trouble hearing you. We can hear the chair very well, but not the members.
I feel like the, no offense to the design review, but the palette that suggested trying to bring colors from the rendering is way too contemporary for that environment. It feels like the palette that was suggested by the design team is picking up some of that connection to that railway, that train station. It's not exactly copying it, but it's definitely picking up those tones, warm tones. And I think if it was me, I would take these samples to exact location and really see what
yeah.
these grays are doing, because we also have warm light here, and it's really hard when you look at different screens and how these get rendered. It feels like that palette to me mentally connected to that environment, and that feels way too contemporary to me, at least because that has lots of blues in it versus that train station, which is very, very warm palette.
I mean, now that I'm hearing Deepa, I kind of agree that I like this because I like it. But I do think there's some value to, now I get what you're saying, to kind of going for a field trip and actually seeing and thinking about how this palette against that palette will look. That's not a bad concept to sort of do.
I'm fairly sure in another meeting, though, we talked about separating ourselves from the train
Yeah.
station
We did.
and not using it as a palette, that it didn't have to, you know, that we were looking for this building to be more contemporary, less ornament, less decorative. It still has a lot of ornament on it. And so,
Train stations do.
yeah, so I feel like our discourse, we're flip-flopping a bit on the discourse,
Well, I
you know,
don't know if
here.
you want to match exactly what's there. What I'm trying to say is you're going to have two buildings on either side. The mass of this with kind of that contemporary colors is going to take your attention totally off that train station, which could be the intent. But it's going to look like two different buildings, and the new building is definitely going to stand out in that environment. It doesn't have to speak to one another 100%, like you don't want to color match what that stone is, but I think there has to be some visual balance between the two sides. You don't want a contemporary building on one side and something that shows kind of an age of the building, if you will. But
yeah, I think that's a legitimate way to see it. I personally think that this is a contemporary building because it is from the 21st century.
Sure.
And contrasting is not necessarily disrespectful. And I think what I like, and of course, you could see it both ways, right? What I think the approach that I heard was respecting and following the downtown. So it's more like a more holistic way of matching the context, and then using some of the pattern of the station in some of the detailing that's across the street. So it is kind of like a nostalgic reference by using some of the materials, but not a direct, like, oh, you look brown, then I'm brown. You know, it's more contrasting, which and I think it could work both ways, you know. So I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, I think trying to match that pattern will get lost because of the scale of this building compared
Sure.
to that train station. And I think irrespective of how hard we try, that trying to take that cue from that building will get lost just because of the scale of this building.
It's possible, but how strongly would you like to see them connected? How direct?
I don't know if I want to see it connected. Like, I definitely don't want things to be color matched, but at least many a times, like, to me, mentally, I feel like this is what's going to catch my attention, if that may be the intent. And the whole idea of that environmental context, if you will, is going to get lost somehow.
I get it. I think that the only thing I would say is, like, right now, what detracts from the station is a very disorganized curb cut with strip mall and houses, and there's no order there. I think this is going to create a scale, a pedestrian scale, and a wall, a streetscape, and a curb appeal that actually would benefit actually wanting to be there and sit on the bench and then look at the station.
I would say that I can see it both ways, but after listening to you guys, I don't think this is as severely industrial or modern as we are perceiving it. I personally would be comfortable with this, and I'm not too concerned.
If I could put my 2 cents in.
Please.
I think we have to consider the materiality, where this is a stone building with a large overhang hip roof, and it is its own entity. I mean, it's its own vocabulary, it's its own architecture. That's what he was famous for. Exactly. And we've kind of chosen to acknowledge it with having directly across from it a seating area that has a little bit of that vocabulary, both in the materiality and colors, as well as creating a location where you can enjoy the train station. You're looking dead set against it across the street. And then the building itself is not stone. It's a wood building. Grays are not, it's not a contemporary color. They've been around for hundreds of years. The vocabulary of the lower level retail harkens back to an earlier time. So we're kind of acknowledging the time period, but it is a different building, totally different materiality.
I would suggest, because you're going through this exercise anyway, that we just put together 2 complete color palettes. They're almost here, right? This one has 3 shades of cool gray. That one seems to have 2 shades of warm gray. There was a driftwood shingle picked out. I think I remember that. That might go with one palette. There might be a different shingle that goes with another palette. We should get the full size shingle sample. And then the bricks, if this is the brick we want to use because it relates to the downtown, then we'd be able to see which of the grays best match this brick, which we want to use. And then we should have 2 different renderings, one that you force into, at least in the printing, you force into looking warm, one that you force into looking cool when it's printed. And then we can look at those 2 palettes. I think there's 2 good options here. I don't really think there's a wrong answer, frankly. But it takes just a little bit more homework to have, okay, here's option 1, here's option 2, which one is it, So otherwise, I think we're going to go back and forth all.
And I follow up with the brick, so I get what you're saying. This is on page 9 of 17. Material 1, the brick matching the downtown and also on the wall, which is what Trish just said for rendering. Material 2 is pretty important. The design review adamantly said that's unacceptable. So I would agree if that's that block Peter saying sits right near Peter, the gray paver. So I think that's important to give feedback to the applicant on material 2 recommendation on page 9 of 17.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is very gray versus a warm.
I think they were more, if you read through that, it's more than the color, it's sort of the quality and the texture.
Oh, so that's for the ground?
Yes.
Okay,
That's for the plazas, right?
okay, that's for the plazas, if the sidewalk, but you'd see both red and gray on the ground. One is kind of a field and one is kind of a path or a border, is that right?
That's correct.
Is that, yeah.
Yeah, so again, I'm just trying to keep it concrete. They said stake in the ground, sample is concrete paver that's unacceptable, recommended granite, natural stone paver matching the color. I, again, personally agree with that, and I think the board should decide and give direction to the applicant.
And this is where it will complement the train station. So I think that's a good compromise of something. So how do we want to go about this? I mean, there's a lot in here that the applicant hasn't really approved or gotten through.
Could I ask maybe Peter can answer this. Is the intent that those sidewalks will be brick, Peter, or is it not part of that scope?
So those sidewalks over there are, I believe, concrete.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the decorative things.
It's the brick band matching the downtown. I think that might be what they're thinking. There's a band of brick on the new downtown sidewalks.
Yeah.
Correct. But I think as you go around Pizza Mine,
It changes, yeah.
it changes because that
depends on the
sidewalk
width.
becomes so narrow. I would have to go out there and take a look.
No, I think you're right, because in front of the town hall here, you have the concrete, and then when there's extra space where the light poles are,
Well, the light
then
poles-
they infill that with brick,
Correct.
like an extra layer.
Yep. And then some areas in the it's not over near the library, there is a strip of 4 bricks. Well, I would say on the opposite side of town hall, between the train, obviously, to the left and right of the train, near the Veterans Memorial, I believe it's 4 brick. I think that strip is 4 bricks wide. And I think that's what's kind of carried throughout, except what Marcelo is stating is where there's a street tree, there's extra
go
room,
around.
there's plantings, the brick expands to much larger, much greater area. I think in this area that we're talking about over here, opposite the train station, because of the existing buildings and the sidewalk size, I don't know if there is a brick banding if a brick banding exists, or is it 2 bricks or 4 bricks? I would have to walk over.
But
there
I
and
think
take
it's
a
still
look.
kind of cool to have this sprinkle of brick throughout Ashland. Like if that is what design review is intending to do, to kind of create this visual that you're in Ashland, there's a little bit of this brick in different places, I'm all for it. That's not a bad visual to create for downtown Ashland.
I don't
even if-
disagree. It's
So again, I think it's coming up with, originally we started with, hey, there's 4 options, but I think we're just down to 2 color options. One is more warm and one is more cool. The cool option may use the red brick that we see in the sidewalks. The warm option may use a slightly warmer brick as in the train station. And I see those options, I think, coming out of this text, but it's it's hard to read about color in text, right? Versus seeing a picture with arrows saying, this is this color, that's this color. So I think that's what, again, no criticism of the applicant. You just got this today too, but we can put together these two options, which were basically the same except for the warm, cool color palette. And so we'd have 2 palettes next time and see which one
But
like-
material 2 recommendation is more than color. It's materials.
It is, but it's a paver. It's so if we go back to the paving, So there's two, right, even in that, there's two different pavers there. There's, right, the smaller scale paver and the bigger scale paver. That's in the Pocket Park, but,
Still.
right, so.
Right, so I also have the same thing on the,
Exactly. So you have you always have two materials. And I assume one is always kind of the gray and one is this other color. Is it a warmer brick or is it a warmer paver or is it a cooler paver?
But, and I guess going back to the other discussion, so what's being created here is some sort of a brick threshold
Yes.
between the road and the project. And once you cross onto the project, it changes to those large pavers over there, right?
that is,
Yeah,
the
that's
way
what,
it was in the curve of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
and it might have a little, almost looks like it has a little border all the way around or that color is being used, but. Does that sound like a next step so we can move on from, it doesn't sound like we're gonna get to a decision exactly on color today because we don't have the stuff in front of us visually. And like I said, we just all received this today, so.
I mean, the one thing I'll say is maybe a way to compromise towards what Deepa's saying and towards what some of us seem to like, the cooler colors on the building, is maybe the palette on the ground should be more warm towards the train station. So the train station is almost like spilling into the building, but the building is completely cooler, right? So there could be that kind of balance,
So we could see it on those updated renderings, the options. Option cool with warm, warm with cool, warm with warm. I guess these rendering right here that shows the plan could be also replicated with the two options, right? With a warm option and
Yeah,
a cool option.
yeah.
And the other one that shows the building. And I think with that, we should be in good shape too.
Yeah, so if we can just look at it with like this rendering and the one where it's an enlarged flat surface. And if we can just have those two drawings, one with the cool palette and one with a warm palette, and then we can look at it.
Can I make a recommendation? Because I think also to push this forward is that the applicant, like, assume this was GCG and they give a response. Because some of these things, we are absolutely not talking the same thing. You guys are getting stuck on color when it's talking about quality of materials. On material recommendation 2, I don't see color, I see quality of materials. And that's what spoke to me about what the design review wrote. So I think that we're never going to get, unless we get the applicant saying, I get it, yes, I'm going to get some better materials and I'll work on the colors or whatever. I think they're going to have to, because I thought it would be easier, but I see that it's not without that.
Which paragraph are you on, Kate?
9 of 17, the very top thing, material to recommendation.
I mean, it sounds like design review is not quite confident yet in the materials.
No, they just want granite instead of
Yeah.
concrete.
Yeah.
So what's the next step in this? Are we gonna have the applicant kind of go through and see what they agree or disagree with? It sounds like Charlie hasn't had a chance to look at this either, so there's no like definitive commitment yet. Right?
Correct, this was submitted to the applicant today.
Yeah, so I think we don't have anything finalized, but we have enough information to pursue this to the next step, I think, right? So maybe we just want to go on and see if there's anything, see what other things we can kind of help cherry pick out of this list that may be low-hanging fruit.
Well, and that's what I was saying, marking up like the 1G3, recommend options presented for planters seating act as a buffer from the street. That was a clear yes, I believe,
Right,
from
so
the applicant.
I'm sorry, Kate, what page are you
That's
on?
page 9 of 17 still. And I'm just
Oh.
saying, that's a low-hanging fruit. I believe everyone agreed and liked it, move on, yes. And the applicants say, yes, see drawing, whatever, when they finish, right? So it's
Yeah.
all clear. because there's a lot of stuff here, and I think that's the only way to.
You're
But
talking
did-
about the bottom comment, correct?
The 1G.3, I believe that's a yes, they agreed, the board agreed, right? But
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, to keep moving through, ask the applicant to mark up and then reference a drawing when they have it.
So Kate is recommending that the applicant review the design review documents and tell us if they agree or disagree and where
I
in the
think
new
that's the only way to
rendering
get
this
through
is.
this.
Yeah, but there's some that we already,
Yeah, but that's
we
what-
all agree with, which is
exactly.
what Kate is saying. So that, we can just check.
Exactly. I already wrote yes, but
So next, the only other one, well, we talk about the colors and the materials, we already agree with what the next step is
I feel like we
on that
skipped
one.
page 5. Like, how did we get to page 9? I feel like we skipped.
Because we got talking about materials.
Okay, okay. So page 5 talks about the GCG percentage for multifamily housing.
Yeah, those are with the EV chargers
Oh,
again.
gotcha.
It's a note, but it's not really
Okay.
in their purview.
I think 5 was good. You can go
Yeah,
to
that's
Okay,
good.
so then 7,
the mural. We
I'm-
talked about that a little. I don't think anyone had any.
do people like the mural concept?
Yeah, I mean, we already have
Yeah.
one mural and
With the
Awesome.
caveat
Yeah.
that that has to be commissioned by the town and.
Yeah, same language as Starbucks.
Same as, right?
yeah, I think we'll see what the Starbucks process does, you know, and
See if you like it.
Is the applicant okay with a mural?
I-
Or giving the town an easement to put up a mural? It's really up to the applicant.
yeah,
We can't
question
require
to
it.
the applicant.
But
and
that's
there's-
what I'm saying. They can mark this up. So they can
Yeah.
hear us. We said we like it. They
Okay.
can mark this up and say, no way, Merrill, or yes, we'll entertain easement. Move on.
Can we just be clear on the mural? We can't require it. It has to be negotiated.
No, we can
So-
require the permission to install a mural in the
We can't
future.
require it, I don't think.
That's how we did it with Starbucks.
We negotiated. We asked them if they were willing to do it, and they said
But
yes.
that's what we're
Yeah,
saying
so
now.
Yeah.
they're hearing us
Yeah.
saying, yes, we support
Yeah.
the design review
Yeah,
request.
we'll-
They're going to go and
We'll
say.
hear their
yes.
feedback, yeah.
So the next one, recommended provided sill stand interpretive historic mural on the pocket park. That's
so-
related, I guess?
That's the mural that we
It's the
just
same, yeah.
discussed.
Yeah.
So then signage,
You know, so signage location as indicated is acceptable, so fonts and colors of signage shall be deferred and reviewed prior to occupancy.
Signage guidelines study is underway. By whom?
That took me by, I have no knowledge of
Because
any.
I've heard the design review was interested in signage at some point, some discussion. I don't know if this is, could you,
Yeah.
can you confirm, are you, is your team studying the signage, or what happened with this discussion with the design review committee?
I'm just trying to think back. So what we did, we presented the locations for the signage where it says retail signage, or, around the building. Didn't deal with font or anything like that, just indicated location. And they were fine with that. The signage guideline study is underway. I'm not quite sure what that means.
But the
Jerry,
way
do
this
you
is
have any
written,
idea?
if the board agrees, we just put a condition. You can't put up a sign until you come back to the board for approval.
Yeah, I mean, we've done that in the past, and it's been painful and not fun to have to deal with
I
these.
imagine it's not, yeah.
It's not, to have to deal with these type of decisions a year later. Maybe half of us
Yeah.
won't be here the next time
No,
we
no,
make, so it's like, it's kind of something we should make a decision now.
so then we need
And
a
if-
proposal.
So then they
Yeah.
need to give us a proposal.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
then that's the direction to, again, they mark it up, they're gonna come back with drawing, whatever is our proposal.
Yeah, I think that's fair to just ask for a sample, a kind of a
Sample
hypothetical
sign.
business, and put the sign how it would look. I like the fact that it's being illuminated, externally illuminated. We don't want any self-illuminated signs or anything that move anything. It should be a downtown requires a certain type of
Grace.
more graceful lettering and materials.
Yes.
So we can see it.
So if you can do an enlarged view of the signage showing the gooseneck lighting maybe
Yeah.
and the sign and what color the letters are and,
Yeah, the enlarged rendering here, I mean, do we want to see it here, or you think like a
Sample
full,
sign, yeah. We'll just-
like an expand
Well, it can be in
it
a drawing, I mean,
Yeah.
not actually produce a sign, right?
like,
But
like
no.
that.
But yes, so there's, on their drawing, they're zooming in and like, right now the letters are white. I doubt they're proposing white
Yeah,
letters on
but
them.
that's the thing. We
Right,
could
so
say,
what
oh,
is
they,
it?
they should be either bronze or they should be black or
Yeah.
there's something that
Or if
should
there's-
be matched around the town.
Or if there's
downtown.
photographic examples of real signs, it's gonna look like this. We're gonna match this style of sign, right? It can
And
help
it would
with
be
that
good,
too.
it would be great, I think, to assign an approved material for the lettering. If we see
Yeah.
whatever's been done, whatever in the town, like they did with this historical signage throughout. It would be good that all the businesses, as we move forward, the signage, there's a downtown
Consistent.
feel of consistency of, maybe 2 metals or something like that.
Yeah, so in other words, you don't have to reinvent the wheel
Yeah.
on the signage. Just show us what you're thinking,
Yeah.
something that maybe goes along with other things that are downtown.
Do we have anything historic in Ashland as far as signage consistency or anything that we have already?
I hope that that's the study that's underway, because the design review committee, one of the tasks that we all thought of throughout our discussions, is that would be a good endeavor.
Can we ask them if they're doing that? Why don't we reach out to them and ask them what this is all about?
So we wouldn't have to be discussing this, would be, there's a signage rule.
Yeah, or if anything, I mean, hopefully, like worst case scenario, that signage will match new guidelines as put forth, but
Yeah.
I just don't, when will
we
that
can do
happen?
that.
So
right?
for
When will
now, I
that
think
happen?
seeing the properly rendered, not white letters,
Yeah.
but properly rendered with the right font size that is expected, and then we can say, okay, we like it or not, change it.
On 8 of 17, 1G.1, I think that's planting, so I think that's just the applicant say yes or no. I don't think that's,
I'm sorry, you're on page 8 now? Right.
It
8,
turns to 9.
1-G.1, and it's just about planting, so I think they're gonna say yes or no, right? That we,
Yeah, basically get rid of lawn and get rid of grass, things that has to be mowed.
So are we on page 10 now, on the
we're
bottom?
still on the bottom on 9, I think, but it's probably pavers, so we're good, we can move on. So, 10,
Off-site snow.
Yeah, snow storage, so,
yeah, that keeps going back. It was originally off-site, then the last tech review, I think they said on-site, and I think that's why design review picked it up. And it looks like the current applicant intent is on-site, so then we would want details of that,
It
What's-
says along the landscape bed along Homer.
which doesn't seem like a good idea.
Agree.
yeah, I mean, so question to the applicant, what is the current plan for snow storage?
We've always said that it would be removed. I know there was a comment in there from the DRC saying that we had retracted that, but that's not the case.
Okay,
The only area we need for, if there's more snow on the ground than can be accommodated, on site, it will be removed. 1 or 2 inch snowfalls don't require removal. You simply plow it and it's off to the side of the road. So it's still our plan to remove any significant snowfall will result in it being removed from the site.
okay,
Good.
all right,
That was easy. You
Number
like that?
11. 11 now?
10, yes, page 11.
Still 10?
Sounds like we're happy to add trees. At least 2 is what was in here, that's good.
yeah, so I think,
You got 1H.4, remove invasive species.
7% native.
I think, I'm assuming the board would support that. so
Sure.
The applicant.
yeah, and, anything on the site, yeah, that invasive species can be removed.
Additional trees, they already kind of said yes, I think, on 1H.5. 2H.1 on page 11, critical root zones not shown.
I think that's a good idea, because we originally, one of our very first meetings was about those trees that are on site on the left, I'll call it the left-hand side. The existing trees, they're sort of at the boundary, and people were concerned about keeping them, is my recollection.
You mean like at the back fence? Those are
Yes.
the ones that
Yes,
yeah, there are a few trees along there.
Not all of them, but some of them.
Yeah,
yes.
the ones that are, yeah,
Right. There's
savable.
an elm and an oak, and when we had 90-degree parking, we had one space that was slightly smaller. It wasn't 20, it was 18, to accommodate the space needed around that route. Since we've reconfigured the parking, we've made this landscape buffer larger, and I believe now that it falls within that criteria.
Good.
Okay,
Greg,
so that
you
seems
wanna-
like,
That seems
something
resolved.
you're willing to entertain when you go through the list.
Sure. Yep.
All right, so, yeah, so the next page, 12, is where I think that tree comes in again, which we've talked
Yeah,
about.
which we
Yep.
already discussed.
Yep,
So we're adding a tree, not moving a tree, right?
adding a tree.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're replicating the same
Cool.
setup on the other plaza.
The arrow looks like something I would draw, so thank you. No offense.
Just give yourself more
Those are
credit.
your lawyerly art
Exactly,
skills.
exactly, exactly. I feel included. I'm like, wait, is it moving over? What's happening?
We can discuss that, so they know where we stand. That's probably final change. Don't have anything on 13. 14, we go to 15.
Wait, hold on, I'm just curious, what is pergola? Yeah, pergola, what
That's
is
in the
that?
pocket park.
Wood trellis, wood structure.
Oh, got it, okay, thank you. Learned a new word today.
So at page 15 of 17,
I'm sorry.
1-L2, the bike racks, I think we said toward the front. I don't know what the final thing will look like, if that, but I think that's okay.
I think that's been agreed.
And that's all from design review. There's other open things with this, a planning board. They're not huge things, I think, so.
Yeah, I think most of the planning board things, again, tie back to GCG. I think we went through those
Probably
last time.
GCG.
Yeah.
Yeah, who also got this document. So once we read through, maybe we'll see that those things are being picked up.
Yeah.
Okay, so, see the applicant. Have we given you information on these things about the ones that the planning board had an approval or an opinion on, and other ones that design review, whatever was decided with the design review committee is good? So I think the next task is for you guys to just go through the list, make the changes that you agreed upon or discussed with the design review committee, things that are, and if there's anything in here that you think is a problem or an issue of the things that they've asked for, then those are the things you need to come back to us with, that here's something that's going to be hard for us to accommodate, or that we don't agree with, or that interferes with our own design process, whatever the reason is. Does that make sense?
It does, Madam Chair. Thank you for for clearing up, giving us the opportunities for.
But I
And
think
we're
we're getting,
getting renderings too, right? With the. two-
yeah, so
Okay.
the two renderings, the two
Yep.
different, because I think a lot of the confusion is, which one are we doing again? So at least, we'll have two color palettes, but I think the rest, I think we're getting close. I think a lot of it is, it seems like a lot, but it's not,
I have a question related, and it's probably more internal than the applicant, but maybe, so we haven't had any, I saw on the tech review meeting, it was about water and sewer, but I think the water and sewer, it didn't seem settled to me. Like, we're under a sewer moratorium, which means somehow in Ashland, there's a problem with sewer, or potential problem, because that was the moratorium we have to investigate. Yes, we are under a sewer moratorium.
Under a sewer moratorium, yes.
but
Yes.
this application came in before that.
No, I understand. My point is, we're under a sewer moratorium because someone said there's either a problem or a potential problem with our sewer. I would like to know what that means for this site, okay? There's some from the tech review, they asked for grinders because that will help with the problem. But we should know, as a board, what this really means, what this project means for our sewer in Ashland. We also should find out with the water. And the water, it rained a lot this year, it hasn't been a problem, and there's the supplemental MWRA. So I'm not saying water's not a problem, okay, but what I do think we have to, or at least ask the question, right? There's some businesses there, but now we're adding a massive facility. Is the water pressure adequate when we're dealing with like the amount of added residents and the fire protection? And I think I have not seen an answer to them, so I think we should ask for that.
But the application, I mean, the town needs to, the utilities and the town have to guarantee the service, otherwise, the capacity for the service. Otherwise, this application wouldn't even make sense. I mean, GCG, I'm sure, evaluated that.
No, I don't.
How does that work, Peter?
And the sewer moratorium, I mean, and I remember even on the discussions on the sewer moratorium was really not about sewer moratorium. The sewer had actually decreased over years. We were told that.
Yeah. Correct.
So, I don't know who is going to guarantee.
I'm happy to
what
reach out to
phase-
Greg Eldridge, who's our water and sewer consultant, to
Yeah.
get verification.
Yeah, I'm sure they can say, oh yeah, there is capacity and there's no problem, and then they'll.
We hope so, but here I'm reading grinders on the property to reduce stress on grinders and pumping stations. This, I didn't make this up, this is
So
from the
just to
technical
add some
Yeah, but
color
that-
to that, I'm happy to add some color to that.
Yeah.
That comment came from our DPW, our Dan Mauer. You know, Dan Mauer is our water and sewer commissioner. That's who made that comment. A lot of times you go to a pumping station, there is, not just in Ashland, but across all sites, and obviously everyone works in construction as an architect, X, Y, and Z, is that there's a lot of times, yeah, there are people that pull out wipes. And it's just not in Ashland, it's across all apartment complexes, right? And there are opportunities to put, if they're saying, if there's an opportunity to put a grinder in, then it may make sense because of things people flush down toilets. And that's where I think that comment comes, and I think that's directly what it's aimed at, is to say, it could be possible, if it's possible to put a grinder pump in an apartment building, it may make sense to help ease any, I would say, influx in harm on that system. But regarding the sewer capacity and that, I'm happy to reach out to Greg Eldridge and make sure that we're taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but the grinder's not insignificant. If a apartment building's coming, that will have an impact on all of us, and we have a way to mitigate it. I think that's what the planning board is supposed to do.
Yeah.
So,
It sounds
The-
like something that we should consider adding to our decision, a grinder pump for this apartment building.
One person said it, but it has not been replied to by the applicant or GCG.
Correct, yeah, I don't think we've ever really touched upon it. Obviously, the applicant did get this tech review memo, we were in the tech review process, and that's what the comment was, to add a grinder pump, you know, and
that was
we've never really touched this topic when permitting 100 Chestnut or 501 Bond
Yeah.
Street. We've never really heard this comment from the sewer, so it's kind of came out of
So it's a recommendation that just came out
a
of-
recommendation, best practice.
Okay, so can we have GCG?
I can mention it to
Opine on it?
GCG and opine on it. I can have Mike Carter
We need to
opine
have,
on
I
it.
mean, an expert to say, you really don't need it, or actually, yes, you actually want that. And then we can say, okay.
I'm happy to have that conversation.
I mean, I think Peter's right. I've been to Deer Island, took their tour. You want that. And this is a big impact, right? So if we didn't do our best job and on other developments, let's not repeat that. That's, you know.
So,
No, I could-
so
I-
tech
I-
review is also, we don't have time today to get to, so maybe we can include that in our next agenda and include this element.
And I kind of agree with what Katie's doing, but I think that decision should not be just, let's ask for it because.
No,
Let's ask for it if there's a.
If it makes sense.
Assess first if it's
it makes sense,
necessary.
and if there's a professional opinion of an expert that says, this is what you should do.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have a basis for the request, not just,
Understood.
let's ask for it.
No, I'm on the same page with that. I agree 100%
Yeah.
with
I
Marcelo
hope that that's. the
to say if it
Me
make,
too.
if it's.
That's why I brought it up, yes.
Yeah, and I think hopefully I was able to shed some color on that comment that was made by the sewer department. And, you know, but I'm sure there's residential houses that flush baby wipes down the toilet, and they go into their septic systems, and they go into
Right,
the
but our
pump
job is to
stations.
consider impact on infrastructure in decisions. That is very clear. So
Yeah,
I
I think
think.
we're all in agreement.
But back to the water, so on Chestnut, if you recall, there was a potential issue about pressure, and we put that on the applicant. I have heard nothing about pressure, and I want to bring it up now because I think that will be a condition. If we don't know, we're going to have to put that in. But to be kind to the applicant, we should probably at least find what we can, right, without spending engineering services, but at least, I mean, apparently the applicant doesn't have a concern. Maybe it's not a problem, but I think it should be raised, I guess.
Yeah, so that's, I'll
I'm
go
happy to
Jim.
put an email together and try to get an answer.
Okay, you have to talk to him anyway about Cedar Street, so.
I'm happy to.
So
talk to
water pressure and sewer. Okay, capacity.
them.
And the pump. Great.
Okay, so, just while we have this open, and we're kind of wrapping it up here, I do want to open it up to any public comment on 9 to 49 Homer Ave. I don't know if there are any, and some of it was held during our public comment. So, all right. So it doesn't look like any more public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on. So anyway, so next time, at our next meeting, we would expect to see the design review committee list having been gone through and responded to by the applicant. The things that we talked about today, we've given as much feedback, I think, as we could. But for you to respond to those things, because they're directed to you in the drawings about, you know, what we're supposed to approve. And then we'll also look at, hopefully not only have a report on sewer and water, but be talking about the GCG report. And so I would also recommend that the applicant also go through the GCG report, which I know they're doing anyway, and see if there's anything in there that's an issue. And what is remaining that is still going back and forth,
Yeah, I can
if
just,
anything.
I'm sure the applicant will be able to do that. Obviously, I talked to Rick Salvo, the civil engineer, today, and so I know that process is underway.
Okay. But I think we got through a lot today. I think we made good progress, so.
Terry has his hand raised.
Oh.
Yes, Madam Chair, I do have, with regard to the GCG report, I did have an opportunity to go through it with Rick Salvo. A lot of those things in that report deal with matters that typically are dealt with during a building permit application rather than planning board review. And I'd just like some guidance as to how you feel about that. I mean, you've dealt with GCG reports before, I assume. They seem to be a peer review that the town relies on periodically. So I don't know that are we expected then to get into the nuts and bolts of the building permit process, or deal with simply planning board issues?
Well, like I said, I have not even had the opportunity to even look at that report. I haven't even opened the file. So I cannot comment on what those.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah.
It goes into detail about engineering things, for example. That normally we have our project engineer who, you know, takes care of those things when we file the building permit application. We submit building permit plans are a lot more detailed, obviously, than floor plans and elevations.
Understood, but our consultant is extremely used to doing this kind of evaluation at this stage of the game. So I would be personally relying on GCG to say, no, this needs to be taken care of at this stage, and this is how we do it in Ashland. But maybe not. Maybe maybe they would make a different comment. I certainly don't want to speak for them, but I'm not going to disregard anything they have in their report.
Yeah, I would just ask for.
They've certainly gone far afield and commenting on some legal things, and I thought they were engineers, not attorneys.
So maybe comment when you respond, because we are clueless right now.
Sorry, can you speak up, please?
Sorry, maybe when you review it and you start responding, you can put that in your response, which element you feel you're not comfortable addressing right now and why. That can go right into your response, so then we can make a more educated decision.
Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we obviously just cannot respond now because we don't know what the document says. So,
Actually, if possible, what is the timing of the applicant's response to GCG? Because it would be good to have it in advance so that we see what they said, so that when we come to the meeting, we already have an opinion
Yeah.
on the exchange.
I would, obviously, it's kind of a back and forth. It's a volley back and forth. Obviously, we did get the GCG report today. You know, the email prep for the next meeting, it was gonna go out next Friday. And so I would like to have a response, you know, back to GCG by next Friday, so at least the planning board is seeing what the response will be. And hopefully the turnaround is a little bit quicker, obviously, because of where we stand in the game regarding the review. And obviously, GCG takes, I mean, obviously, you know, the civil engineer takes the report and then adds any new comments that are needed to obviously make that correction. So if it's possible, I would probably say by next Friday morning would probably be best, if that's acceptable to the applicant.
Rick?
We can meet that deadline.
okay. Great. I mean, that'll keep the process moving because as you can see, it hurts when we show up, when we come and we haven't been able to review the material. So then it's hard for us to move the ball forward on our end. So.
Well, thank you for having done so this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Okay.
feel like we're getting there. But that means, we'll be continuing this to 2 weeks.
Correct. And so just as an administrative matter, I did work with Attorney Morris, and we did take care of a continuance. It's all set. I accepted it today. Actually, he sent it to me before the meeting. It'll be filed tomorrow with the town clerk, and it is to extend the public hearing process until November 17th, which is, 1 minute. That's the week before Thanksgiving, and that is going to be, we have a meeting, excuse me, yes, it's the Friday after our November meeting. And so we'll have next meeting, and then we'll have another meeting, and then, but if, you know, we'll get a better idea of where we stand after the next meeting than the meeting in November. And one of agenda item, not to lead into it, will be our November, December schedule. So I think that's a good time frame.
It doesn't mean that we're making a decision at that time. We're extending it out until we get to the point where we're ready to make a decision.
Yeah, I just think knowing the meetings in November, and then I know we did that one time, it was like, oh, we have a meeting, but it was due, and it's not, the way this is going, I'm not seeing it all wrapped up, all the conditions in a written agreement by that November meeting. That's the point.
It sounds fast to me,
Yeah.
given where we are right now with just
Yeah.
receiving documents today. So,
I mean, it's fine, it gets us out of the woods right now, but it's
Yeah.
just gonna keep doing this, so we all have to keep it on our radar screen so we don't get caught.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. No, I think we can bring it up at the next meeting and see how far we get along on the 26th, and then go to the 17th, and, you know, keep, you know, yes, we must feel like we're hamsters in a wheel, but this is just, you know, part of the process.
Okay, so on that note, we'll be looking for a continuance.
I make a recommendation that we can continue the 9 to 49 Homer Ave site plan and special permit application until the October 26th.
6th.
You're making a motion, right? Not a
Yes.
recommendation? Okay.
Yeah. And we're
I'll second
also-
that.
Roll call vote.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcel Verhona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. All right, so we will see you on the 26th. We will allot, as today, have a good amount of time for the discussion of this project.
Yes.
So, and that should be easily possible to do. All right. All right, thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Okay. Amanda, still hanging with us?
She hasn't left yet. I don't know.
She hasn't
I
run
don't know
screaming
what.
from the room.
Are you okay? You haven't left yet after all this?
Well,
She laughed at my lawyer joke of drawing, so that worked.
That's fun reading, I'm sure, right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are then moving on to reports on planning topics. I'm not sure we have anything new on these three items, scenic roads, economic impact, or parking memo.
I do have
Anything?
I do have an update.
Okay.
On economic impact study, and so I did swap emails with Framingham State, and I will be attending their Merck Advisory Board meeting on Friday, October 27th, and so hopefully that relationship continues to build, and we kind of move forward and continue, and so. That's where that one I can stand, and obviously we continue to work on scenic roads and a parking memo. I know we talked about updating our parking bylaws, but it just keeps on, as more projects come up, that one keeps kind of sitting lower at the totem pole. But
Has that scenic road postcard or whatever it was, has that actually gone out yet?
let me check with Alvaro. I thought about the same thing, and I thought it did, and
I know we're getting close.
We're getting close.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, then, reports from board members and town planner. Comprehensive plan,
Kate, you
kind of
wanna
give a
take that
little
one?
update.
Really, I think I gave an update of the last meeting, so the next meeting is a week from today. We have public's welcome and invited. We do have to work on like sound issues. Again, I think I heard some movement maybe on getting that to get it more relevant to the people online. They did have trouble, also people in the room. But planning board, welcome, please attend. We roll up sleeves and keep working.
Now, you may have mentioned it the week I wasn't here, I don't know, but, so you have two co-chairs now of the large steering committee group. Did we talk about that last
Yes,
time?
they were,
Yeah.
we selected two co-chairs that will not rotate, yes. The steering
And
committee
that's-
now has that.
And they've signed on for potentially for the year and a half or 2-year
Yeah.
duration.
Pretty happily.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Oh, pretty
Yes.
happily.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, okay.
They've been tricked.
Excellent, excellent work. Well, I just think
Don't
that's
say
pretty.
these things out loud.
Yes.
Don't say 2 years.
I just
Come
think, because I did watch the tape, I saw them when they were kind of, I don't know, the first time they were they weren't permanent yet,
Right.
And I was happy because it seemed like the thing that, you guys, I don't remember who talked about it in the beginning, but about being able to draw out leadership from the community. And I was the one that says, no one's going to step up for that.
And they did.
We better have
Yeah.
it in the regulations that one of us, select board or planning board, can step in if no one else steps up. But it seems like kind of your first choice of, I don't know, people from the community stepping in. I think that's a really powerful thing.
Absolutely. And it's good to have both of them representing unique perspectives in the community,
Yeah.
for sure.
So I say kudos for,
As long as
for
they
that
don't find
process
out
that allowed
that
that
it's
to
a
happen.
2-year process, which you keep ruining by.
you said it just this next time. So, okay. Anyway, okay, was there anything else comprehensive plan? I kind of jumped in there.
The consultant undertook a survey of the steering committee to assess our community connections to begin the work of engaging with various members of our community. And so obviously the steering committee alone cannot guarantee all the connections to all the underserved communities or the unique organizations, et cetera, that are part of our community. And so if you remember, at one point as a planning board, we brainstormed who do we want to bring into this process of the comprehensive plan. And if you have our members, if you have unique connections to underserved communities in Ashland, or a community that you believe would have a vital voice to contribute, please let Kate and I know so that although you didn't fill out the survey, we can take that and say, oh, the planning board has these types of community connections, whatever they might be, that you think may not be in that room. Like, you know who's on the steering committee. If you think you have some kind of connection that's not in the room, please tell us.
Do you have any idea yet when, like, the things like the community forums and things will start to happen that are very open? Do we have any, like, ballpark on that?
I'm a little nervous because it's sometime in December, and that is a big, it's kind of a big, important thing out of the consultant's public process, but we don't have a date. So I did say it tonight, I'll say it again, it's December, please, public, like, it's December, but we got to get that date, right? Because we can't get people there if they can't plan for it. So, yeah, December, the consultant did recommend trying to tie it with a community event, and they've seen success. So we have like that Illuminate Ashland, which might be something.
This is where like we as a planning board can be part of that, meaning
Yes.
like you each, whether you ran for election or not, you all have connections in the community, people that support you, that share their views with you. Like, please come to the
Yeah.
forum, bring your neighbors, bring people that have spoken to you about planning issues. We should be part of that, of creating that presence in the room. That should be on us as well, because we are planning board.
I think so. I mean, that's how the planning board can be present, and you have, all the board has been very supportive, and it's clearly not absent, in my opinion. But I think there will be a time where we're going to need even more, and it might be certainly December for one, soon.
I kept telling, like, we had an event at the farmer's market this past weekend. The Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee had an event to kind of spread the word of the comprehensive plan, and I talked to a couple of public members, and I made a point to say to them, we are required by law to engage with the public for a successful comprehensive plan. Like, we have to do it. We don't have a choice. It's the law. And that's really, really important, because it's there for a reason. Like, we can't plan without the public. So I really appreciate how focused Kate has been on public process. That's awesome. But I feel like I haven't done enough on that, and I feel like we should all try to do more to bring our neighbors and our people in as much as possible. And I know we in this room have good connections to certain members of the community, so.
All right, great, thank you. Any other reports? I think the other ones were kind of covered, or, you know, that we don't need a report on at this time. Anyone else have a committee to report on?
I say nothing for.
Okay. Then, under administrative matters, we wanted, Peter and I wanted to talk about the meeting schedule for November, December, given how the planning board always falls within the holidays on November, December.
Can everyone see that?
Oh, boy.
So currently we are in October. It's October 12th. We do have a comp plan next week on the 19th, and then our next planning board meeting is going to be on the 26th. This meeting hasn't changed. I do want to just mention, and I'm going to skip to one of the administrative items. Number one is that I've been connected with, obviously following town council and the litigation regarding Whitmore Estates. And town council has proposed an executive session for next Wednesday night at the select board's meeting. And this could be held in person and or via Zoom. So I just want to, this happened today, kind of came across yesterday, late yesterday, early today. So I figured I'd just kind of talk to everybody in person. Would everyone and or a majority of the board be able to make an executive session next Wednesday night?
And that would just be coming on for just that portion of it.
Coming on just for that portion of the meeting.
Wednesday night, the
That would be the 18th. Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
What time?
I can do that.
I think it could be before their meeting, so it could be a little bit earlier, but I can confirm tomorrow with the town manager's office a time.
I'm open.
Okay. I can put this in an email as well tomorrow and or on Monday. Moving into November, is everyone okay if I moved into November?
Yes.
Just to make note, I did make that MAPC Trails meeting. That is regional and in the morning, if anybody's interested in going. That was part of that email that I sent out. Halloween is on the 31st. I am not going to take credit for that. So here is November. Thanksgiving is going to be on the 23rd, the fourth Thursday of the month. Our planning board meeting is always on the 2nd and the 4th. So here we are going to meet on the 9th of November.
And then the 30th, right?
Correct. So here's the kind of the start of the conversation. So normally we meet on the 23rd, And we are proposing, I'm proposing to move the second planning board meeting to the 30th, which is taking advantage of the fifth Thursday of the month.
I think that's a good idea since Thanksgiving is the 23rd, unless we all want to be napping in this room on
Yeah.
Thanksgiving Day. Unless you guys want to come over for turkey.
Also to
I'm
note,
thinking-
the MBT, the select board a while ago, mentioned that, one of their last meetings, that to have a update on the MBTA community zoning. And so on the 15th, the planning board will be asked to meet with the select board to go over, MBTA zoning, myself and,
November, right?
this is November
15th?
15th, correct?
And I
So
guess
it's a
that's
joint meeting.
That's something I could have just reported very briefly on. Peter Alvaro, Joe Magnani, and I have met twice now about that and are kind of digging in and we'll be having on the 15th some real initial proposals about how we can.
And that's a joint meeting with the select board that we show up to their meeting?
We show up to their meeting just for that portion.
Yep,
Yeah.
sounds good.
And in December, so normally we are going to meet on the 14th and the 28th. Remember, we're gonna meet on the 30th, we're gonna meet on
Yeah, 30th.
the 30th of November. So we're gonna have one meeting, so what I'm proposing is have one meeting in December at this point,
On the 14th?
and that will be on the 14th. Having a second meeting is the week of the 28th. Obviously, it's school vacation week. I'm always off that week. I'm out of town that week. Myself and Alvaro are both out of town that week.
I think that's okay to not
And-
have one.
Okay. And so that will be the schedule for November and December.
And then we pick it back up 2nd and 4th in January.
And keep in mind that the comprehensive plan will have its big forum sometime in December. So
That's correct.
it would be good if we are skipping one of our meetings, maybe try to show up for that
Mm-hmm.
as a,
So that,
yeah.
Neighbors, cookies, whatever it takes, yeah.
Yeah, I think traditionally I will say just so that, I've done comp plan, obviously I've done comp plans. We have the first 2 weeks in December. Then after that, everyone
Yeah,
checks out.
yeah.
Everyone checks out for the
Hopefully
holidays.
the public forum will be,
Yes. And
towards
so I
the
think
beginning.
having that meeting on the 14th is good timing. It's at regular intervals between the meeting on the 30th. And then obviously we can all take a Christmas break and then come back in January and then get back into our first and fourth Thursday of each month, rolling in the new year of, I can't believe I'm saying this, 2024.
so our January meeting would then be on the second Tuesday, which is the 11th. So that's almost a month off, folks.
wow. I don't know how I can make it.
So that is the meeting scheduled for November and December. I think we all concur.
Everyone's good with that, moving that November meeting, though? Okay,
Yes.
great.
I talked about Whitmore Estates, 10 to 30 Chestnut Street. The foundation walls are being kind of poured. Last Friday, they finished up the subsurface drainage. Mike Carter was out there, checking out the drainage. We're moving forward with the sewer and water connections, laying that pipe. That's all being inspected by GCG in our water department. We're all working together. The next item I would say is Starbucks. Obviously, everyone's probably driving by the site. The foundation has been poured. It was backfilled and doing some grading work. And so that's where that project stands right now.
The mural has movement, right? I think they have
The
like,
mural does have movement. I just haven't been briefed on that.
I want to say they posted a deadline for artists for mid-November. So if you know muralists, I think the deadline is it November? I think it's a November deadline.
Yeah, I
Am
know.
I making that up? Or
No,
is it October?
I don't think you made that up.
Yeah.
I think I responded to an email last week that came from the
Yeah.
Ashland committee, the Cultural
Council.
Council. It was just asking, what's the size, what's the material. I had to jump into the building permit, look at the building, look at the size, look at what's going on, what they'd be painting on. I fired all the details off to them, and then I
Cool.
really haven't heard back. So
But that's
obviously that
movement.
process
That's
is
great.
underway.
Cool.
All right, that's all the updates.
That's all I have.
All right, and then we have no new applications, I assume.
We have no new applications at this point, and I see a couple maybe rolling it. Obviously, I think we all, the brewery at the fire station, that's the next one I would say, I'm waiting for, and then going from there.
All right, so we've already discussed the next meeting. We have the meeting minutes from, August 24th. That was one. I was not there, though I do have a couple, just little
Yeah, go for it.
corrections. Item 13, Zoom conferencing versus
Oh.
Zoom.
Yep.
And the other one, it took me a while actually it's way back on line 126, on the last page. With the planning board, Mr. Matchek reported that the planning board received a throttle letter.
These are the two things I was going to change, the Zune and the throttle.
And I assume that's withdrawal letter.
A throttle.
The throttle.
I
That
do-
sounds serious. Someone's being throttled.
Yeah.
No, it's just a
I mean,
withdrawal.
I drive a
receive.
standard car.
Regular
It sounded
time,
like
it's not a-
something.
A throttle.
Exactly. I don't
I
know.
know, it looks
Yeah, it's very
Yeah, that's
frightening. I
just a
don't want
first-
it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we never got that letter.
Unless I'm
Because-
driving a boat. Nope, that's just withdrawal.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes of August 24th, 2023, as amended with the two corrections mentioned.
Did anyone else have any corrections? Okay,
I'll
is there a
second that.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
And I think that's it, because I wasn't there.
So I'll make a motion to finish the meeting
10:03.
Adjourn.
at 10:03 PM.
Yep, I second.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
And on the last vote, I always ask for
Amanda Hayes, aye.
Jen Tricia Kenda, aye. So we are done. Thank you.
Good job. Is that your first one? It is. Oh, wow. How do you feel? You felt like a natural...